Hello. It's Romania Black. And my fan came in just in time for us to finish volume 2 of Scum Villain's self-saving system. Yeah. I'm super excited. This is not one of those fans that you can pop, though. It's actually a little bit more delicate, so I'm trying to be, like, super cautious with it. But, ow. I just got a splinter. Just got a splinter from it, too, so in pure Shen QingQiu fashion. Yes, so where was this back in July when it was scorching hot? I needed this. So yes, I'm fully ready for this new volume, as you can probably tell. I'm going to set this over here. I don't want to fold it back up. It takes a little while to fold back up, but I'm super excited. Last week, when we looked at chapters 49 through 51, I was a bit manic. I had a lot of manic energy, and I swear, I sit down to record these, and it's like some kind of Pavlovian thing where my dogs, who have been doing nothing for the last hour, the moment I sit down, they're like, oh, it's time to play. And I'm like, no, I'm sitting down to record. So I'm going to have to break them from that. We're going to stop doing that so much. But then I feel bad, because then they just bark, and literally I have a little shelf here, and Huckleberry puts the toy up here and expects me to throw it, and I hate to let him down, but... But last week I had a lot of manic energy because Lo Binghe and Shen QingQiu kissed for the first time. It was in a dream, but still, it counts. And, yeah, finally, I've got all the goals on the other side of Whiteboard Coon. We'll flip it over if need be when we're done with this reading. But, yeah, so we met goal number 1 last week. And that was that Shen QingQiu has realized that Lo Binghe is gay. He's realized that Lo Binghe, he realized he's gay, and he thinks that I feel like he knows that Lo Binghe likes him. It's just Shen QingQiu is now in stark denial. He's like, oh, I don't know. Well, he likes me, but I don't like men. Me like men? What? Even though we as the audience, from what we've read of Shen QingQiu and seen of his inner monologues, we're kind of like, well, but you don't like girls because you're not acting like that. So... the funny thing is that while in the other 2 MXTX works, the main character, I think, they were both aware of their sexuality. They were just kind of in stark denial of it. They're like, no. Shen QingQiu does genuinely seem slightly oblivious, but he's also been doing a couple things that were like, yeah, but if you pay attention, you'll know that you kind of do have these inclinations. And he just seems to be, in denial of it. So what can we do with that? But we'll see. I have a party pop already. I also realized last week I did these completely wrong. These are not the type where you pull this and no, you do the ring around and then you undo this wrapping paper and you just kind of throw it. They were really cheap. So that's probably why. But we'll just keep it around if we need it in case if we meet any of the other goals. But we're looking at chapters 52 through 54 this week, which is on pages 263 to 302 in the actual novel itself. So the last chunk, we're also going to be reading the back of the book, and we're going to be looking at the glossary, so like we do, and see if there's anything new that we need to know about. So I went back through and noted how where we kind of ended up at, because a lot of things happened last week, and it was just one thing after the other. There was no breathing room. We were messing with corpses, so of course there's no breathing room. But yeah, so we had Liu Qingge showed up, finally got in, thanks to a mysterious someone that maybe we'll find out their identity in this chapter set. But got in, took Shen QingQiu's old corpse that Lo Binghe's been sleeping with for 5 years, and took off with it. And Lo Binghe was pissed, so he's getting Mo Beijun, and they're going to go after Liu Qingge to get it back. So the crazy thing is that Lo Binghe does not know that Shen QingQiu is the Shen QingQiu that he thinks he is. He just thinks he's just somebody that kind of looks like him, and it's like, oh my god, the miscommunication. Meanwhile, Shen QingQiu, or I don't know if I should call him Shen Yan, because I feel like I should call him Shen Yan, but then the book calls him Shen QingQiu, so it's just like, it's a little bit confusing. I want to kind of call him Shen Yan because there's the corpse of Shen QingQiu, and that gets confusing, but I'll probably just keep calling him Shen QingQiu for now, and we'll just say the corpse is a whole different thing. But anyway, so Shen QingQiu is with this demon that we don't know exactly who he is yet. I'm hoping we find out this chapter set. I think that he is the demon that Shen QingQiu left the sun moon dew mushroom with, and that he's used that to create this new body that he's now using. I think that this demon's fallen in love with Shen QingQiu, and he's taken the sun, moon, dew mushroom, made himself a body, hopped inside of it, and is now like going to try to woo Shen QingQiu, and then he's going to become a romantic rival for Lo Binghe. And it's like, oh my God, as if this couldn't get any more confusing. So yeah, I think that's gonna be it, because he was really handsy last chapter, and it was helping, you know, Shen QingQiu to avoid the blood mites that were trying to kill him. But being handsy and helping him, I don't know if, you know what would be crazy? If this demon ends up helping Shen QingQiu realize his sexuality, that he's gay too. And then Shen QingQiu's like, cool, thank you, Snake Man, for helping me to find this out. I'm gonna go be with Lo Binghe now. That'd be amazing. Maybe that's that character. Maybe their whole point in this cave as a side quest was to potentially help Shen QingQiu figure that out. Snakes in a cave, the allegory of the cave. Shang Qinghua was creating this subplot subconsciously and didn't even know it. We'll see. But anyway, then we have Zhuya, which was Shen QingQiu's former sword, and then Zhang Yang, which was that not Lo Binghe's old sword too? They both have been repaired, but I don't know if they're still at the Huanhua Palace or if Shen QingQiu yoinked them or what happened. We didn't quite get that information last set. And then we've left off with, while all this is going on, Shen QingQiu is in this dreamlike realm, and when he shows up in the dreamlike realm, I didn't mention this last week, but when he shows up, Lo Binghe is just thrashing about. And there's a scene in Modao Zushi where Lan Wangji thrashes about and destroys some trees. It reminded me a lot of that moment. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. So, and I'm sure people in the comments have talked about that. But anyway, my only thing was that Shen QingQiu's in this dream with him, but he's supposedly going off with Mo Beijun to get Liu Qingge. So how close proximity does Shen QingQiu have to be to get in these dreams? Or is it even Lo Binghe's dream? Is it the dream of the other demon and Shen QingQiu can't tell the difference? I guess we'll find out. But I don't know what the radar specificity, I don't know what the radar is to be in the dream realm. Or maybe it's like in Heaven Official's Blessing when they communicate, you know, through the communication array. It's kind of like the Wi-Fi password. You automatically check in, but you don't have to be within proximity of that person to access the communication. Maybe it's something like that. Maybe. Possibly. Anyway, Shen QingQiu starts out in this dreamlike state where we end the chapter set at, where he doesn't want to lead Lo Binghe on. He's like, look, I don't like you that way, I don't believe, and I don't want to lead you on and then disappoint you, because clearly you've thought I've felt a certain way about you this whole time and I haven't, so I don't want to make that any worse. So he tries to walk away. He tries to be like, nope, don't want to do this, gonna leave, all that. And he says he doesn't know why. He's like, Lo Binghe, once you turn evil, you're supposed to like be super happy. And it's like, it's not working because he wants to be with Shen QingQiu and Shen QingQiu's not letting him have it. So he's like, what do I do about this? And then in the end, he feels bad because he's like, I can't, it's like, I wish I knew how to quit you from Brokeback Mountain. He's like, I don't know how to leave. I want to be nice to you and kind to you, and I don't know how to be mean. And so I can't leave, damn it, you won. So it's the thing that's still, I think, the big miscommunication amidst the fog of misunderstanding is that Lo Binghe is still equating someone liking him to wanting to have sex with him. And that's not always the case. And Shen QingQiu, I think at some point is going to have to tell him, like, look, you have to build up to a point where someone wants to have sex with you. You can't just assume that the moment I'm nice to you, that means I want to have sexy time. That's not what this means. And I feel like it's MXTX making a statement, because I've experienced this a lot, and I know a lot of other women I know have experienced this a lot, where the moment that we meet someone, the first thing they want to do is they want to get physical or have sexual relations. And it's like, can't we get to know each other first? Can't we get to know each other and establish a relationship first, and then maybe it'll move on to that? But in so many cases, society has made, I think, a lot of heterosexual men feel like the very first thing that they have to do is instantly get physical. And it's like, no, we don't want that. We want to build communication and a relationship. And I'm not saying that every man is like that or every woman is like that, but in so many relationships, if I've tried to do any dating online, that's instantly what it is. It's like, let's just get sexual right now. And it's like, oh, let's get to know each other first. And that doesn't seem to be what ends up happening. So maybe MXTX is trying to make a statement about that, being like, yeah, this is kind of considered the norm. And Shen QingQiu's like, well, that's stupid. And it's like, yes, exactly. It is stupid. We should do something about that. And so maybe that's what part of this story is going to be. I feel like, again, at this point, as we end volume 2, and this may change, but I feel like part of this is going to be Shen QingQiu teaching Lo Binghe that you need to develop a relationship with somebody before it goes to that next level. But also, after that whole incident at Huanhua Palace where Liu Qingge bust in and there was a battle and naked corpses and Lo Binghe looked not the most appropriate by accordance of the sect rules and whatever, I feel like another thing Shen QingQiu is going to have to do is save Lo Binghe, because I can see how people are going to start turning on him. His own sect might start turning on him and making him the scum villain, because just imagine if it gets out there like, he's been sleeping with a corpse for 5 years. Like, the impropriety. Like, I just feel like Lo Binghe is going to become a scum villain and Shen QingQiu is going to have to save him. And that's what the story's turning itself around. So, and Shen QingQiu's got to make Lo Binghe not a scum villain, but a better person. So there's just a lot going on. A lot happening, y'all. And I'm really excited to see where we go to from here. So yeah. The Discord's been sharing a lot of amazing fan art. It's not really been feral, so I haven't been needing to share any of it, but I do encourage y'all, keep sharing that fan art. I told some people in the Discord that I want to make sure the fan art is appropriate to what we've read so far in the novel, and everybody's been really good about that, so that's good. But there's been a lot of moments in the novel there was one particularly there was a comic that was shared that was of the water prison scene, and the way that they drew Lo Binghe definitely makes Lo Binghe look more sympathetic in that moment in the comic than he appears in the novel. So again, when things are animated or adapted to the Donghua eventually, if it is, hopefully, it'll be interesting to see the route that the animators take to how they choose to show those expressions, because MXTX gives us a picture, but then when you see it animated or illustrated by somebody, you're like, oh, that's how they interpreted that scene. And it can sometimes be a little bit different than your own interpretations. So I find that really interesting. Huzzah. But yeah, I've talked long enough. Oh God, I've almost talked for 13 minutes. So we're going to leave this up. We might flip it over when we get to the end of the chapters, but we are going to be looking at chapters 52, 53, and 54 of Scum Villain's self-saving system. And we're going to be doing that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's see what we get. Only a short while ago, Shen QingQiu could have matter-of-factly believed that Lo Binghe was nursing a grudge and keeping the scars to remind himself of his hatred at any time. But now Shen QingQiu could no longer deceive himself about the exact meaning of these actions. Yes, like before he was like, oh, well, he's just trying to keep his hatred with me going and everything. And now it's like, no, 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 no. He's actually kept these scars because they're what you gave him and he cares about you. And it's a sign that Lo Binghe believes that he's hurt you. And now Shen QingQiu's like, well, I can't ignore it now. I know too much. He'd finished reading the hugely long original novel and raised this child to adulthood. But he'd never realized that Lo Binghe was actually a pure-hearted young man. And as the deeply emotional stallion had turned gay, the stallion part had summarily dropped. This Lo Binghe, who'd been bent to heaven's new wear by his rearing, possessed a heart both masochistic and easy to harm, more delicate than a young maiden's. That's interesting. So we're establishing that Lo Binghe, you know, because he's not, you know, he was actually, I like that Shen QingQiu says he never realized that Lo Binghe was this pure-hearted person. He's always assumed that he's grown up as this angry, evil being, but knowing how he's influenced him, he's like, oh, he's not this, you know, stallion. Instead, he's got this heart that's both filled with self-loathing and self-harm, but is extremely delicate. It's like, And maybe the stallion part getting dropped doesn't indicate that, but to Shen QingQiu it does. Or maybe it wasn't that Shen QingQiu had never realized it, but he never thought to understand. Oh, that's the thing. It's like it's been there in front of you. You just haven't tried to understand him. You've just been assuming certain things about him. Oh, good. That's a great line. When all was said and done, he had still regarded Lo Binghe as a character in a novel and adopted an attitude that he was something to constantly observe and occasionally mess around with. Most of the time, he kept himself at a respectable distance, and Lo Binghe, who'd had the strongest presence in the original work, had ended up suffering most of Shen QingQiu's assumptions about tropes and story formulas. Oh, yes. So Shen QingQiu's like, good. He's finally realized. He's like, shit, I've been treating him like I have the other characters in the story, like they were just book characters. And I've just been trying to play with them to like finish the game and win the game and solve the puzzle without realizing that he's an actual person that has feelings and emotions and would react to whatever I did. That, yes, Shen QingQiu's been acting without realizing that there's a reaction to everything that he does. So yeah, of course. And Lo Binghe has the strongest presence in the original work, and everything Shen QingQiu's been doing under the assumption of how he thinks that the story is going to go has been affecting him. I'm glad Shen QingQiu's realizing this now. Faced with this true Lo Binghe, Shen QingQiu felt it was all extraordinarily troublesome, and he was truly at a loss for what to do. He was still racking his brains for solutions, so from his angle, he couldn't see the hint of a twisted smile lifting the corner of Lo Binghe's mouth. Oh. So, is this... So two things immediately come to mind. One, is this actually Lo Binghe in front of him? I think it is, but we can speculate. Or two, is this Lo Binghe being happy that he's with Shen QingQiu? And is he happy that Shen QingQiu is contemplating and thinking about all of this? Is the fog of misunderstanding giving him ideas that he shouldn't be having? Okay. Oh, part 12. ZHUZHI. After waking, Shen QingQiu opened his eyes to see a gauzy snow-white canopy above him. Someone pushed open the door and walked in, and then lightly closed the door behind them. Are you awake? Shen QingQiu rotated his neck back and forth and looked at the asker out of the corner of his eye. Under the light of the lantern, which was warmer than the light of the moon, that young man's looks were indeed good. The corner of his mouth held a smile. His appearance was peerlessly clever and handsome. His eyes especially exuded a kind of gentle and quick-witted air. I love the idea that Lo Binghe is cold as the moon, and then you have this other individual who's like warmth from a light. The warm and cold comparisons. Yes. He'd seen this pair of eyes before. They were the eyes that had been nurtured by the dew lake. Yes! When Shen QingQiu rolled into a seated position, a bag of ice fell from his forehead. The man stopped to retrieve it and put it back on the table, and then replaced it with a new bag for him. Upon seeing this, Shen QingQiu was too embarrassed to voice all the "who are yous" and "what do you want" he'd been holding within himself. Coughing once, he said in a reserved tone, "Many thanks for your assistance at Huanhua Palace." The young man stood by the table and smiled. Humans have a saying, a drop of kindness should be repaid by a flood. Moreover, the kindness from immortal Master Shen far exceeded a drop. First of all, this gentleman was indeed that snake man from Bailu Forest. Yes. Second of all, this gentleman knew that the person inside the shell was Shen QingQiu. Oh, he does! Yeah! Tian Longjun? Shen QingQiu asked probingly. The reason why that ancient line of heavenly demons was called heavenly was because, according to legend, their bloodline had fallen from the heavenly realm and became demons. Only a heavenly demon with a lineage purer than Lo Binghe's could suppress the blood within Shen QingQiu's body. In that case, a problem arose. Of the heavenly demon lineage, Shen QingQiu only knew of two who had been named in the original work, Lo Binghe and his dad. What? Oh no, what? Who else could he guess? But such things only came in threes. At this juncture, Shen QingQiu's super unique riddle-solving method, which has succeeded every time to date, finally hit a wall. The man shook his head. Oh, immortal Master Shen, taking me for my lord is truly an excessive honor. Okay, so it's not his dad. I was like, for a second, I thought if Lo Binghei's father has fallen in love with Shen QingQiu, this is reaching a level of kinkery that I'm not ready for. Okay, good. Good. Ah! Okay, when Shen QingQiu heard that my lord, he finally figured out which character this person was. By the time of the original work's prologue, Tianlong Jun had already been subjugated and imprisoned underneath a high mountain. However, that grand battle of many years past had little to do with the male lead's overpowered and stallion ways, and thus airplane shooting towards the sky had but roughly covered the affair. He said only that Tianlong Jun was no match for the combined siege of numerous top cultivators of the human realm, and he was imprisoned beneath XX Mountain, never to be freed again, his trusted right hand separated from him by injury or death. Which mountain was XX Mountain exactly? Shen QingQiu had never properly considered the question, but once his curiosity was piqued, he finally realized which it was. Bailu Mountain. Bailu Forest on Bailu Mountain. Shen QingQiu looked the man up and down, so this was the trusted right hand of Lo Binghei's father. Oh my god. And the fact that Shen QingQiu didn't know or say anything about this... But looking at him now, he could find no trace of that snake man's deformed figure from their first encounter. Shen QingQiu swallowed. May I venture to ask this distinguished gentleman, what is your name? Tianlong Jun's subordinate, ZHUZHI-LANG, the man said courteously. His words only just left his mouth when the system gave a notification. Increased degree of storyline completion and filled in hidden character list. B points plus 300. Activated plot hole filling event. B points plus 100. A burst of uncontainable excitement suddenly welled up inside Shen QingQiu. Plot hole filling definitely referred to those atrocities whose perpetrators had never been identified, leaving the reader defrauded and without leads, as well as the buggy setting details in the original work. This was precisely one of the greatest reasons that Shen Yan had disdained Proud Immortal Demon Way. It was also a major reason why he'd been beating his chest, stomping his feet, and gnashing his teeth after reading and finishing the novel. Now he'd drawn out a character who had never directly appeared on stage, and the system had opened a plot hole filling opportunity. Could it be that next, he'd finally uncover the truth behind those giant plot holes ripping through the sky? I saved you once, and then you saved me once. We're even now, said Shen QingQiu. The saved you once he spoke of referred to that time he stopped Gong Yizhao from killing the snake man. But ZHUZHI-LANG shook his head. Well, there's more to it than that. If not for immortal Master Shen, I'm afraid that even after many more years, I still wouldn't have been able to approach the Sun Moon Dew Mushroom. How could you say we're already even? This sounded perfect to Shen QingQiu. All right, then let's discuss. Can't you just extract both influences from my blood? Must you let them remain? It was as if there had been a parasite within his body, and the doctor's approach to treatment had been to place another parasite inside him to fight it. From every angle imaginable, his situation had only worsened. It's this humble one's first time utilizing heavenly demon blood, says ZHUZHI-LANG. I've never even heard of a means by which to dispel it. Though this was disappointing, Shen QingQiu still expressed his understanding. The blood had entered his body and dissolved without a trace, so separating it out again truly wasn't especially feasible. Though it cannot be dispelled, as long as this one's blood is also in immortal Master Shen's body, the other heavenly demon blood will be ineffective, ZHUZHI-LANG said. After we go to the demon realm, the tracking function will fail, and he will absolutely be unable to torment you any longer. Wait, hold on. When did I say that I wanted to go to the demon realm? Asked Shen QingQiu. We're going very soon, said ZHUZHI-LANG. Shen QingQiu examined his expression. The repayment you spoke of, it wouldn't happen to be taking me there. Why go to the demon realm at all? It was short on supplies and natural resources. The culture and customs were incompatible with his, and the environment wouldn't suit him either. In addition, more urgent worries were still piled up in his forebrain. For one, there was his brain's new trauma-driven meltdown, courtesy of Lo Binghei's near-necrophiliac behavior. And for another, he'd let Liu Qingge run off with his original body. What if Lo Binghei exterminated Sangzhong Mountain in a fit of anger? Shen QingQiu had to get there before him and notify his comrades. He swiftly tossed his covers aside, planning to run away, but unexpectedly, just as he began to move, he felt something slimy, soft, and icy cold slither up his leg. A jade green snake lazily poked its head out from beneath the covers and flicked a scarlet tongue towards Shen QingQiu with a hiss. This snake was 3 fingers thick, and at first glance it resembled the venomous bamboo viper of the human realm. Its eye sockets were horribly large, while its pupils were disturbingly small, a ghastly contrast. But Shen QingQiu wasn't afraid of this sort of soft-bodied animal. Regarding it coolly, he stealthily gathered energy in his palm of his hand, intending to catch it off guard and blow off 7 inches of its body. But suddenly, the jade green snake reared back, its red mouth gaping open. It was merely a snake, but from its mouth came a shriek as ear-piercing as a human's. At the same time, a dense layer of countless green spikes exploded around its head like a blossoming flower. The sharp tips were suffused with scarlet, obviously poisonous even at a glance. And the snake's body also inflated several times larger, as if it had been pumped full of air. Just a moment ago, it could have been considered a cute, dainty, ornamental snake, but now it was a real fucking monster. The breeds of the demon realm were verily savage. Shen QingQiu promptly dispelled any thought of touching it with his hands. ZHUZHI-LANG poured out a cup of tea. "Immortal Master Shen, why would you try to leave before I finish my explanation?" he asked cordially as he placed the cup on the table. "This one sincerely wishes to repay you for not killing him in Bailu Forest. You even went so far as to assist him." Shen QingQiu chewed on his lip for a bit. "You want me to go to the demon realm, and when I don't want to, you put this thing in my bed. Is this your idea of repayment?" ZHUZHI-LANG smiled. "Not only in your bed." Another small snake, the width of a thumb, slid out from Shen QingQiu's clothes. This snake had been coiled in his robes all along. Warmed by his body temperature, it had been nesting comfortably, not moving an inch, so Shen QingQiu hadn't even noticed its presence. With an endless hiss, a flood of countless green snakes of various widths and sizes slithered out from under the bed, carpeting the whole floor. Shen QingQiu was silent for a long while, until he said, "The snake race? My father was from the southern border," ZHUZHI-LANG said calmly. No wonder his name was thus. The demon race placed a great deal of importance on social class and lineage. Common demons or demons of lowly lineages could not append Jun to their name. This title was a suffix representing one's social status, similar to how the emperor's name was taboo and couldn't be infringed upon. The reason Lo Binghei's path to ascension was slightly rocky in the original work was because the demon lords took issue with him being of mixed human blood. In the early stages of the Demon Realm arc, Lo Binghei had done in quite a few characters named in the fashion of XX Long. Therefore, Shen QingQiu had concluded that while names with this suffix weren't necessarily all from the slums, their origins couldn't be especially esteemed either. ZHUZHI-LANG undoubtedly belonged to the heavenly demon bloodline, but he couldn't take the title of Jun. The issue was evidently due to his mixed heritage. The snake race resided on the southern border of the demon realm. Strictly speaking, they still counted as part of the demon race, but their true forms took on the appearance of giant snakes. They were born in this form, and they grew in age and cultivation. A terribly small number would over time shed their scales and take on a human appearance. But even more stayed in the shape of a snake for their entire lives. "Who is your mother?" asked Shen QingQiu. "Tianlong Jun's younger sister," said ZHUZHI-LANG. Tianlong Jun's younger sister counted as something like the demon race's princess. How foolhardy was she, that of all of her options, she had to have a child with a snake. Way too fucking hardcore. I don't know. There's a lot of Naga AO3 tags, so. Is it? As Shen QingQiu endured those 2 snakes creeping around his leg and stomach, he asked, "So you're technically Lo Binghei's senior's cousin?" I say, can't you tell these fellows to not slither into my clothes?" "If by senior one only means older, that can certainly be said to be true," ZHUZHI-LANG said. "And they seem awfully fond of Immortal Master Shen, so there's nothing this one can do." Who the hell believes there's nothing you can do? Okay, so he's Lo Binghei's like second cousin. Cool. Shen QingQiu bore with it to ask, "Why were you at Huanhua Palace?" "Originally, I went to take care of official business, and I never thought I'd see Immortal Master Shen," ZHUZHI-LANG said with great patience. Shen QingQiu's heart thumped. "Official business? This official business you speak of, does it have to do with Lo Binghei? To offer an alliance and rule jointly as overlords? Or had there been a falling out within the demon race? Or maybe it had been for a heartbreaking demon family reunion after many years separation, overcome by tears of emotion. This time, ZHUZHI-LANG smiled and didn't answer. Oh, come on! I fear this official business wasn't as heartwarming as reconnecting relatives, said Shen QingQiu. This one was only obeying his lord's orders, ZHUZHI-LANG said, unhurried. This body of yours, was it sculpted from the sun moon dew mushroom? Asked Shen QingQiu. Yes, it had to be, right? If ZHUZHI-LANG had used that one sprout for himself, it would make things easier. If he hadn't used it for himself, then it was possible that he'd used it to sculpt a body for Tianlongjun. Tianlongjun had been imprisoned under a mountain, hanging on by a single breath for many, many years, and his original body was likely long ruined. But if, like a cicada, he shed his carapace, Shen QingQiu really couldn't guess what sort of waves would result. He had an uneasy premonition that his own careless flutter of butterfly wings had released something monumental. Having received no reply, his mind couldn't settle down, and he continued, Is taking me to the demon realm another one of your lord's orders? Whenever a question touched upon the subject of Tianlongjun, ZHUZHI-LANG clammed up and refused to answer, offering nothing but a polite smile. It was truly infuriating. Only when Shen QingQiu finally withdrew in defeat did he open his mouth, retaining his usual refined and courteous manner. Rest well, immortal Master Shen. If there is anything you need, please say so, and I will certainly handle it for you. We will depart for the borderlands tomorrow at the latest. Exhausted from all the talking, Shen QingQiu asked, Do you have money? Yes. ZHUZHI-LANG responded, Can I use it? As you wish. I want women. ZHUZHI-LANG stopped, staring blankly. Wasn't it you who said that if there was anything I needed, I should tell you, and to feel free to do as I wish? I want women, Shen QingQiu repeated. Get rid of the snakes. A small crack finally opened in ZHUZHI-LANG's smiling expression. After a long while, he did as he instructed. Shen QingQiu hummed a laugh and turned to get off the bed. He threw on his outer robes and tidied his clothing. For some time, ZHUZHI-LANG seemed to be hesitating, wavering over whether to follow. But when Shen QingQiu stepped out the door, he tagged along after. Did he just say that just to get rid of the snakes? As Peak Lord of Qijing Peak, Shen QingQiu had been obligated to be mindful of his image. Though 1,000 curiosities had gripped his heart, he cleaved to the tenet that brothels were not to be entered. But now he had the opportunity. Shen QingQiu acted as though his ZHUZHI-LANG-shaped shadow didn't exist, and after strolling through the streets once, he picked the warm red pavilion for its more hospitable appearance. He strode in, expression utterly at ease. Before long, Shen QingQiu was surrounded by brightly colored decorations, his nostrils assailed by the scent of talcum powder. ZHUZHI-LANG took a seat beside him at the round table, as motionless as Mount Tai. What's with that look on your face? Said Shen QingQiu. ZHUZHI-LANG averted his eyes. It's just, I'm a bit surprised that immortal Master Shen would actually be interested in this place of prostitution. Wait a moment, you'll see what I'm interested in, said Shen QingQiu. Just as he spoke, a new songstress leisurely walked up to the side. She was somewhat older, and the cosmetics she wore were also quite colorful. She sat on a flower stool while cradling a pipa before meeting eyes with Shen QingQiu and staring briefly. Not comprehending, Shen QingQiu nodded at her. Miss? The songstress snapped out of it. Oh, my apologies, sir, she said with an easy smile. Your appearance is excellent and reminded me of the servant of an old acquaintance. My eyes deceived me. When she had said her piece, she lowered her head and didn't mention anything further. Then, with a few plucks and strums, she began to sing. At first, Shen QingQiu just whispered into the ears of the girls next to him, not bothering to listen to the music. But after catching a couple phrases, he suddenly felt he'd heard two incredibly unbelievable things. He called for the songstress to stop. Miss, what is this you're singing? This servant is singing the popular new ballad, Regret of Chunshan, the woman said with a delicate voice. That's odd, Shen QingQiu said, his face full of black lines. Just now I seem to have heard you singing two names. Could you repeat those? The pipa player smiled behind her sleeve. What's odd about that? Could it be you've never heard it before, sir? The leading characters in The Regret of Chunshan have always been Shen QingQiu and Lo Binghe. When did we get fucking turned into a popular ballad? ZHUZHI-LANG had originally been refusing all services, quietly sitting to the side and pretending to be the air itself, but he unfortunately exposed himself when his shoulders faintly shook. Could I ask that this Regret of whatever mountain, what story does it tell? Asked Shen QingQiu. Chenshan literally translates to Spring Mountain. While it can imply resentment, hatred, and or regret depending on the context, since the story seems to be a lot about Lo Binghei's despair over losing Shen QingQiu, as told by the brothel ladies, regret seems closest to the intended meaning, though this is narrower than the original Chinese. Several women next to him spoke with chirping voices. "Oh, sir, you don't even know that? Regret of Chunshan tells the poignant sentiments between Shen QingQiu and his beloved disciple Lo Binghei, the unspeakable and taboo." Shen QingQiu forced himself to listen from the start to the end in a petrified state. To summarize the plot, in short, this was a shameless master and disciple pair who spent all day on some nameless mountain ignoring their duties to knock boots, who went down the mountain to fight monsters and take trips to Pound Town, who used two-person push-ups to settle misunderstandings, who still two-person push-ups, who still needed to play a round of hide the sausage before dying, who continued to ride the Boney Express after death, who after resurrection would still gleefully smack each other's salmons as before. Sort of story. That was great. The Pippa player sighed faintly, plucking a string from her fingertip, having never understood the affection in the other's heart and life, and lying with the body in death. This manner of abiding love is truly matchless in this age. All the women followed up with incessant sighs and sobs. Some already began to shed tears of emotion. Shen QingQiu buried his head deep in his hands. Damn it. Isn't this just some fucking porn? Who wrote these lyrics? What mountain is Chenshan? Qijing Peak? Sangjiang Mountain? Sangjiang Mountain sex gonna wipe out your entire family in a minute flat, okay? So why did we go to the brothel, though? What was the point of coming here? He said that he was going to show ZHUZHI-LANG why they were here, but what was the point? He wasn't expecting this ballad. Chapter 53. Exactly how was this gossip's reach so wide that not only had it infested the borderlands, even the over-the-top porn and bookshops was milking it for its content, as if he and Lo Binghei had been caught rolling in the sheets in front of the whole world. ZHUZHI-LANG let out a chuckle and turned, Master Shen, are you, interested in this ballad? It's weird. ZHUZHI-LANG seems like he's very committed to getting Shen QingQiu and Lo Binghei together. Was he the one smiling in the dream? What is this? Why? He obviously is disturbed that Shen QingQiu wanted to go next to women. Is Shen QingQiu trying to see if he's straight or not? Shen QingQiu looked at him coldly. ZHUZHI-LANG hurriedly corrected the expression on his face, but he still struggled to hold it in. It would be best if I removed myself for a bit, he said. However, just as he was about to get up, his movement slowed, and he froze in his seat. Shen QingQiu observed his expression and smiled. What? Finally starting to feel unwell? Standing up, he shook out his robes, and the green snakes that had been curled against his chest fell to the ground with a splat, rolling over to show their yellowed bellies. The women in the hall began to scream, and the Pippa player flung her instrument away altogether. Holding his forehead, ZHUZHI-LANG stood while supporting himself against the table, swaying back and forth. Staring at Shen QingQiu, he raised his right hand and grabbed a handful of little snakes that had slithered forth from his sleeve. But they remained twined between his fingers, entirely impotent. ZHUZHI-LANG shook his head and said weakly, Realgar. For a while now, without his notice, the entire brothel had been soaked in the scent of Realgar wine. Top quality Realgar wine, Shen QingQiu said approvingly. All purchased with your money, by the way. His assistants didn't need to be superhuman. With a couple of whispers, the brothel girls accepted Shen QingQiu's money and secretly purchased the entire town's stash of regular wine and placed it all around the warm red pavilion and fanned the fumes as it boiled. After it boiled all night, no member of the snake tribe would be able to resist swooning under its influence. Oh, ZHUZHI-LANG's guard might have been up, but he'd been aiming to prevent Shen QingQiu from contacting other cultivators, not these brothel girls. And in the end, he'd been too careless. When ZHUZHI-LANG raised his head, the whites of his eyes had turned gold, and his pupils elongated into slits at the speed visible of the naked eye. His face had also begun to change shape. Shen QingQiu quickly opened the door. Are you going to leave? He asked the prostitutes huddled and shivering in the corner. The women immediately began fighting to run outside. The Pippa player was last, her movements deft. Shen QingQiu stuffed a bag of silver in her sash, compensation for her Pippa, and then closed the door behind them. When he turned around again, where ZHUZHI-LANG had once stood, a giant jade-green serpent was coiled. its body thick enough to be encircled by 3 men with their arms outstretched. The serpent's head was enormous and triangular, its large yellow eyes like copper bells, its pupils the finest of lines. It seemed dizzy, like its thin neck was unable to hold up that heavy head which kept drooping. The real Gar wine's effects had exceeded Shen QingQiu's expectations. It had forced ZHUZHI-LANG to reveal his original form. Now this was a bit of a headache for Shen QingQiu. He picked up a nearby folding fan of someone that had abandoned and snapped it open, giving a couple of waves. The giant serpent slithered towards him and looped around him twice as if to wrap him up, but Shen QingQiu easily jumped free. The giant serpent roiled and twined and then burst out of the building like it was drunk, crashing down into the middle of the street and alarming the passerby, who screamed and fled in all directions. Shen QingQiu followed it down from the upper floor and shouted, "Going outside is useless. The entire town is filled with the smell of real Gar wine." A piercing shriek erupted from the giant serpent's mouth. It shook its head and thrashed its tail in its spot on the road. Shen QingQiu decided to draw it away from places with large volumes of people, and he flew to leap onto the serpent's head. Whenever it moved in the wrong direction or was about to crash into a passerby residence, Shen QingQiu jabbed the side of his head with his fan. The serpent's scales were like armor, and they made a great rumbling sound as it slithered over the ground. Shen QingQiu often had to pour large amounts of spiritual energy into the fan before he could make the snake change direction. In this manner, he just barely managed to pilot it towards the edge of town. I love that because, yeah, now it all makes sense. Shen QingQiu knows his monsters. He knows about the snakes in the demon realm, so he knew that the real Gar wine's effect would have on them, and so he was able to exploit that. I like that he just went to the brothel to get the snakes drunk. That's all he wanted. I was like, but no, that's why. After taking his money, the brothel girls had done their job with everything they had. No one could say how much real Gar wine they'd boiled. Carried by the wind, the smell drifted far and wide. Even after finally arriving at the foot of a nearby mountain, it still continued to waft towards them from uphill. The giant serpent was overwhelmed by the smell to the point of agony, and moreover, Shen QingQiu had jabbed, poked, and ridden it all the way here. Exhausted and spent, it could no longer move. Deciding they were far enough away from the city, Shen QingQiu finally jumped down. The giant serpent was weak and dispirited. Its head sagged while its body was coiled like a meandering mountain road. "Although I'm very interested in filling plot holes, I have no interest in immigrating to the demon realm," said Shen QingQiu. "Besides, I already have enough on my plate to drive me mad. Since you can't remove the heavenly demon blood, you can forget about the repayment or whatever. ZHUZHI-LANG, goodbye." Shen QingQiu's nickname for ZHUZHI-LANG is a name of a jelly brand in China. Shen QingQiu was incredibly afraid that once the wine's effect dissipated, ZHUZHI-LANG would return to his original form and release another torrent of snakes to ensnare him, so he ran like the wind. Once he reached the next sizable city, he found an eminently reliable chain store and rented a flying sword. I like that you could just, yes, that's right, he really rented one. Just like rental cars, immortal swords could be rented, and the prices were entirely fair and reasonable. I feel like Shen QingQiu is like, you know what? I am fully going to take advantage of Shang Qinghua's writing in this moment. Airplane shooting towards the sky, wrote this into the story. I'm going to take advantage of it. Sure. Basically, he was still using ZHUZHI-LANG's money, so Shen QingQiu pressed both hands together and gave thanks to his benevolent brother. Then he sped off towards Sanjiang Mountain sect by sword. After no more than half a day, a continuous, rolling jade-green mountain range with 12 peaks of irregular height appeared within the sea of clouds and mist. "It's been a while," Sanjiang Mountain. Two characters rose to his mind as he thought that. Chunshan. Shen QingQiu silently crossed them out. Ah, come on! Come on now! Oh, chapter 13, coercion. Well, we're not to chapter 54 yet, though. An air defense barrier surrounded the periphery of Sanjiang Mountain sect. Immortal swords not of the sect could not enter without prior notice, and those entering without authorization would be knocked off course. Thus, Shen QingQiu stopped at the foot of the mountain and sent the flying sword back, using the chance to change his clothes and procure a bamboo hat to wear. Cultivators often passed through the little village at the foot of the mountain, yet today he didn't see many. Shen QingQiu was just beginning to find it strange when someone asked, "This immortal master, is he heading up to Sanjiang Mountain sect?" Shen QingQiu nodded. That person continued, "Surely going right now isn't a good idea." Shen QingQiu's heart tightened. "What do you mean it isn't good?" That person and a few others looked at each other. "Well, you still don't know?" they asked. "This mountain has been under siege for 2 days." As Shen QingQiu passed through the gates and climbed the tall staircase, he failed to encounter a single disciple on watch. The ominous premonition in Xingqiu's heart grew stronger and stronger. He leapt up multiple steps at once, dashing forward and upward. The farther up he went, the clearer it became that in many stretches of the sky above Xiangding Peak, thick black smoke roiled, intermingled with the flash of lightning and crash of thunder. The summit of Xiangding Peak was an absolute mess. The mountain forest in flames, the ground littered with icicles, the eaves of roofs collapsed and destroyed like they'd been through multiple brutal battles. Oh, the ice is Mobejun. Outside Xiangding Hall, two distinct factions faced each other. On one side were the human cultivators, some standing and some on the ground, while Mu Qingfang shuttled busily back and forth between them. On the other side were the demon soldiers in black armor, a dense legion with awe-inspiring presence. Though there seemed to be a temporary ceasefire, the moment someone drew their sword, even a mote, the tension that drifted in the air like gunpowder would reignite. It looked like Lo Binghe was no longer bothering to hide his identity, and Shen QingQiu was not surprised. Lo Binghe's bloodlines, revealed in the original work, had been around this time as well. His momentum as he climbed to the top of demonkind was by this point unstoppable, and he'd already thoroughly brainwashed Huanhua Palace, reshaping them until they were perfectly submissive to him. While his footing secured, he of course no longer needed to be secretive. The only difference between this formal shedding of pretenses and the scenario in the original were the setting and synopsis. Though the disciples on the peaks had to wear uniforms, there were also many acclaimed cultivators who weren't subject to these restrictions, and so no one particularly paid attention to Shen QingQiu's out-of-place attire. He squeezed his way through the crowd until he was standing before the hall entrance and peered inside. Yu Qinyan sat there with his eyes closed, while Liu Qingge stood behind him, palm pressed against his back. The ripples of spiritual energy around their bodies seemed rather unstable. In all likelihood, neither of their situations were good. Shen QingQiu had finally reunited with his Zhang Minxiang, an unfortunate Shidi, only to find them in such a sorry state. A state that he'd put them into. Guilt welled within Shen QingQiu's heart, but when he turned around, his breath stuttered. Lo Binghe was standing at the other side of the great hall, a heavy air around him. He was wearing black, which made his skin shine translucently pale in comparison. His eyes were dark as pitch, but also blisteringly bright, and his expression was cold and dispassionate. Yet the air around him struck a fearful unrest in others. Mobejun stood behind him. Though it was a position of deputy, his head was slightly raised, like an ice statue to whom haughtiness was second nature. Yu Qingyan suddenly opened his eyes. Zhang Minxiang, are you all right? Qing Qingqi asked worriedly. Yu Qingyan shook his head and looked at Lo Binghe. In the past, when the demon race attacked Sangjiang Mountain, your distinguished self met them head-on as part of the resistance while your Shizun protected the entirety of Xiangding Peak alone. I never thought that you'd be the one leading the demon race to push Sangjiang Mountain to such straits. If your sect hadn't pushed me so far, I wouldn't want to do the same, Lo Binghe said indifferently. Qi Qingqi was so enraged that she ended up laughing and said, Sangjiang Mountain has pushed you too far. The entire world should come hear this. Even if we put aside the matter of you being an ungrateful wretch who betrayed your sect, you forced your own Shizun to self-detonate in front of you. Then you clung to him even after his death, doing heavens knows what to his body. And now you strike back at us with false accusations? Just who is going too far? Lo Binghe turned a deaf ear to her taunts. Who's next? He asked, apathetically. I'm taking this nameplate. Shen QingQiu startled and looked up. The nameplate that Lo Binghe speak of was the horizontal plaque hanging high inside Xiangdong Palace. The two characters on it, Sangjiang, had been personally inscribed by the founder of Sangjiang Mountain Sect. After so many years, it held extraordinary significance, and it was equivalent to a slice of Sangjiang Mountain's dignity. Likewise, taking this inscription would be the equivalent of slapping Sangjiang Mountain across the face. It reminds me of Heaven Official's Blessing, like if you break a nameplate, it's a sign of bad things, like you're insulting them. Back when Xia Hualing had impudently led an army to surround Xiangding Peak, her goal had been to take that same nameplate back to the demon realm to show it off. If you want to fight, then fight, said Qi Qingqi. First you burned down one of our abodes, next you destroy a gate, and now you're here to take this nameplate. What are your intentions? To torment us methodically, bit by bit, and refuse us a swift release? Qishime, let it be, Yu Qingyan said as he stood. Though he was at a disadvantage, his expression was as steady as Mount Tai. so as not to undermine his troops' morale. QingQiu, Shidi's immortal body. Oh, QingQiu's Shidi immortal's body has already been placed inside the hall. He is of my Sanjiang Mountain, and more importantly, of Qijing Peak. After he passes, he must be interred among the graves of the generations of Qijing Peak lords to rest in peace. Unless you slaughter the entirety of Sanjiang Mountain, so long as anyone in this sect has a single breath left to breathe, regardless of how long it takes, QingQiu's body, Shidi's body, will never again fall into your hands. Exactly so, many of the others present chorused simultaneously. Shen QingQiu had known they would adopt this sort of attitude. It was precisely because he knew that Sanjiang Mountain would do anything to protect the body of his that he had to come back. The corner of Lo Binghei's mouth tugged into an icy cold smile. He lowered his head and said in a measured tone, I won't do anything to Sanjiang Mountain personally, and I won't kill a single member of Sanjiang Mountain sect. But what I have is plenty of time to stall you out. Those 3 words, stall you out, one by one, resounded clearly within Shen QingQiu's ears. Suddenly, his entire heart sank. Lo Binghei was not the kind of person to engage in polite debate. When he was at an absolute advantage in terms of pure power, he was disinclined to feign civility. And if there was a sect he wanted something from, he would employ the most direct and effective approach, bathe the sect in blood, slaughter all corners, and take the desired object away. Yet in this case, Lo Binghei had possessed the patience to stall for 2 days thus far. It was, moreover, it didn't seem like he'd been taken by a carefree mood, but rather like he was waiting for something. For example, waiting for Shen QingQiu himself to appear. Shen QingQiu tightened his fist. Attack, said Lo Binghei. Mo Beijun let out an oh and stepped forward, and before suddenly saying, I have, already many times. All those exploded eye shards, those holes pitting the walls and ground outside the hall were his great works. Then get someone else to attack in your place, said Lo Binghei. Mo Beijun nodded, reached behind himself, and scooped up a cowering figure. He dangled this person like a little chick and tossed him into the large empty space between the 2 sides with a plop. Shang Qinghua's soul was about to fly away. He crawled to his feet in terror, and when the people of Sanjiang Mountain saw him, fire nearly spewed from their eyes. It wasn't just them. Shen QingQiu was also about to spew raging flames from his eyes and his mouth. That trouble-causing fucker, Great Master Airplane shooting towards the sky. Ah, fuck, fuck, fuck! Qingqi drew her sword with a whoosh and yelled, Traitor! Shang Qinghua smiled obsequiously. Oh, Shishime, if you have something to say, say it properly. Oh, don't wave your sword around me like that. You're so pretty. If you were only a bit gentler. Qingqi had already sent her sword flying in his direction, yelling in rage, Who's your Shime? Shang Qinghua hurriedly dodged, hiding behind Mo Beijun. Devoid of sympathy, Mo Beijun kicked him right back out. I was forced against my will. Don't be like this, Shang Qinghua said with a long-suffering look. If anyone sees us comrades fighting amongst ourselves, we'll be ridiculed. Shen QingQiu was flabbergasted. Shang Qinghua truly had even less integrity than he imagined. To be able to say something like that now, it was genuinely a bit shameless. Who's your comrade? Shang QingQiu yelled. You let demonic beasts into the Immortal Alliance conference? Did you think of how the dead and injured Sanjiang Mountain sect disciples were your comrades? You turned traitor and became the demon race's dog? Did you think of how we're your comrades? You fought up the mountain with the devil himself today, and you have the face to call us comrades? The 2 of them chased each other around the hall in what was basically a screwball slapstick scene. Shen QingQiu watched from the side, his heart rising and falling along with it. Chop, chop, chop. Oh, fuck, almost got him. Oh, Qingqi, go for the crotch. Awesome! I like that he's rooting for her to get him. Liu Qingge withdrew the spiritual energy he was feeding into Yu Qingyan's back, having finished the stabilization, and stood. Cheng Long trembled in his sheath, letting out a buzzing cry. Yang Yijun cupped his fist. Oh, Shizun, you've been fighting that demon for an entire day. Stand down, Liu Qingge said heavily. Lo Binghei gave him a glance and then smiled and said lightly, Ah, the loser I defeated. Though not loud, each word was enunciated clearly, the pitch rising, and so everyone in the hall could hear. Liu Qingge's hand tightened on his sword, his eyes sparking with electric current. Nothing could humiliate the Bison Peak Lord more than the word loser. Yang Yijun's temper flared, and he shot back, You demon mongrel! Lo Binghe didn't take it to heart. Yes, I am a mongrel. The entirety of Sangjiang Mountain was overwhelmed by a mongrel. Glorious, isn't it? And not just Xiangding Peak. I can conquer each of the remaining peaks one by one. Let everyone in all the realms know that Sangjiang Mountain, the leader of the cultivation world, was slaughtered by a mongrel, powerless to fight back. How about it? Lo Binghe, Ning Ying cried distressed. Will you only be happy once you burn everything? Qijing Peak included to ashes. Lo Binghe responded immediately without a second thought. Of course not, he frowned. If anyone dares to touch a single blade of grass, a single tree, a single stalk of bamboo, a single building on Qijing Peak, I will not spare them. Liu Qingge humped. How insincere. Chenglong flared, its sword glare sweeping past Lo Binghe's cheek and whipping up his hair. Lo Binghe put his hand on his sword, hung in his waist, returning bite for bite. You overestimate yourself. In the end, however, the two swords failed to cross again. Shen QingQiu stood between them. Sword energy surged and collided from both sides, promptly splitting the bamboo hat that he'd been wearing for appearances in two. With his left hand, he caught the point of Chenglong between two fingers, preventing Liu Qingge from advancing another mote, while his right pushed down on the hand Lo Binghe had placed on Jin Mo, preventing him from drawing it. It's only a body, everybody. Only a body. There's no need for this. Shen QingQiu looked to his left, then looked to his right, those words still unspoken on his tongue. Then Lo Binghe abruptly flipped his hand over and grabbed his wrist, fastening around it securely like a shackle of ice. The smile on his face looked almost twisted as he articulated each word. I caught you, Shizun. Even though Shen QingQiu had long been prepared, he couldn't resist a chill of terror at seeing this face so close. After a moment of absolute silence, a clamor rose in the hall. Yu Qinyan was astonished, his voice trembling faintly. Are you QingQiu Shidi? Qi Qingqi had forgot to hack at Shang Qinghua any further, and the latter hurriedly took the chance to scramble back behind Mobe Jun. Ning Ying tugged on the battered and bruised Mingfan. Da Shizhong, did you hear? She murmured. Lo and Zheng Minxiang are saying that person is Shizun. He looks like he is, said Mingfang, but also not. However, Yang Yizhan's approach was entirely different. He said in shock, these techniques, isn't it Peerless Senior Peerless is Shin Shibo? Thank you for not saying the entire ID. Liu Qingge's eyes suddenly went wide, his usual unaffected expression cracking completely. You're not dead? Shen QingQiu's once guilty and grateful feelings shattered to pieces. Liu Shidi, what's that look on your face? He asked, disbelieving. Aren't you happy your Shizhong is alive? Liu Qingge's face flickered through an entire rainbow of colors. First green, then black, then white. It was quite a marvel to see, and many others looked about the same. Before Shen QingQiu could respond, a hand tugged his face back around. At last, you're willing to reveal yourself? Lo Binghe asked. Oh my god, we still have one chapter! Oh my god! Well, that didn't take us any time at all! That didn't take us any time at all! Oh my god! Oh my god! So he must have, from the dream that so the dream at the beginning of this set was how Lo Binghe realized it was him, I'm guessing. Unless he knows something about ZHUZHI that we don't. Chapter 54. Shen QingQiu's bones felt like they were about to break under Lo Binghe's grip. The only things he could move were his legs, but it wasn't like he could kick Lo Binghe's crucial bits before the crowd. Flames of rage surged within him as he recalled every detail of what had happened. You did this on purpose, he said. What are you referring to, Shizun? Said Lo Binghe. Instead of directly butchering your way through the mountain, you chose to drag things out to this extent. You meant to draw me out. Lo Binghe sneered. So Shizun can, at times, guess what his disciple's thinking as well. This disciple is so overjoyed he might lose his mind. I'm dying to beat my chest and stomp my feet, and I will certainly remember this moment until the end of my life. Liu Qingge withdrew his sword, his body swaying like he was a bit dizzy. He pointed it at Lo Binghe. You let go of him. Lo Binghe dragged Shen QingQiu into his arms and said irritably, what did you say? His movements were forceful, and as Shen QingQiu was pressed into his embrace, those simmering flames leapt into a towering blaze 1 meter high. He silently sucked in his breath. When did you realize it was the real me in the dreams? If Lo Binghe hadn't discovered that weak link, he never could have guessed that Shen QingQiu wasn't dead, nor would he have been able to get Shen QingQiu to deliver himself free of charge by simply waiting at Sangjiang Mountain. Shizun, aren't you being a bit too condescending to me? Even if I didn't suspect it the first time, I really would have been a fool if I failed to notice anything wrong the second. Shen QingQiu's knees suddenly hurt. You're not the fool, he thought to himself. I am. He'd know exactly how incredible Lo Binghe's cultivation was, how transcendental his control over the dream realm, and yet only Shen QingQiu could have been fully aware of these things and still believe that Lo Binghe had been genuinely delirious, unable to differentiate between an intruder and an illusionary creation. If you'd already noticed something was wrong, why not expose me? Had it been fun to play along with the skit of a loving master and filial disciple? Lo Binghe stared at him. Why should I have exposed you? Didn't my sweetness make Shizun oh so happy? Happy? Shen QingQiu hadn't been the slightest bit happy. He'd only been worried about Lo Binghe's emotional state. And this incident proved that even his worry had been a factor under Lo Binghe's control. After all, this was Lo Binghe, the male lead. How could a single blunder on Shen QingQiu's bumbling part have turned him into a small, pitiful white lotus? Shen QingQiu was indeed the type who was open to coaxing over force, but you just couldn't slap him in the face afterward with an "I faked it." Wait, Qi Qingxi blurted out. Exactly what is going on here? She pointed toward the interior of Xiangdeng Hall. Isn't that thing lying inside there Shen QingQiu? How has another appeared? Lo Binghe appeared to be in a good mood. Well, why don't you ask the former Onding Peak Lord? Fucking hell, thought Shen QingQiu. He should have known Shang Qinghua's slimy lack of integrity would come into play. Shang Qinghua let out a weak laugh, and with a single sideways look from Mobeijun, he stepped forward without delay. Drawing a deep breath while raising his head and chest, he said in a clear voice, several years ago, in a certain place, Shen Shizhong happened upon and obtained a treasured item known as the Sun Moon Dew Mushroom. This fungus has strong spiritual affinity and can recreate a flesh body, and with this, Shen Xiang pulled off a grand escape in Huayu City by letting his soul leave his original form. And therefore, the one in the hall is him, only it's only an empty shell, and this one here is also him. They both are him. It was a succinct, crystal clear summary. Countless pairs of eyes promptly turned toward Shen QingQiu. Liu Qingge instantly pointed Chang Lan at him, his new murderous intent even stronger than when he had directed it at Lo Binghe. Well, if that was the case, then why did you make no attempt to correspond with the 12 Peaks for 5 years? Yo Qingyong asked quietly. Oh my god, we received neither news nor sound from you. Could it be that deep down inside, you see your fellow sect members as unworthy of trust? Harboring guilt within his heart, Shen QingQiu's voice was weak. Shizhong, hear me out. Shen QingQiu, you! Qi Qingxi raged. Do you know how much suffering you've caused your Shizhong? How much your disciples cried? They wept so constantly that Xi Jinping might as well have been cloaked in rain clouds for an entire year. It was unbearable to visit. And while the Peak Lord seat was empty, you were free as a bird, having the time of your life in the outside world. Shen QingQiu was greatly afraid of the sharp-tongued Qi Qingxi jabbing at him and chewing him out. I didn't do it on purpose. I wasn't having the time of my life in the least, he hurried to say. I was buried underground for 5 years, and I only woke up a few days ago. You tell me how that counts as free. It's all his fault. How can you blame me? Shang Qinghua said, indignant now that the heat was back on him. You were the one who said to ripen it quickly. Liu Qingge held his temple. Shut up! Shang Qinghua shut up. The ruckus they were making as a group would have been comical under different circumstances, but because the occasion was all wrong, Shen QingQiu found the humor quite dampened. The entirety of Chongding Peak was awash with firelight and scattered with scorched debris. After 2 days of back-and-forth siege warfare, it had lost its usual dignified grandeur. Both within and without the hall were blood-stained faces and disciples who had to be supported. The younger generation were worse off, constantly looking around anxiously, their complexion exhausted, the complete exhaustion obvious, momentum spent like an arrow at the end of its flight. Meanwhile, within the opposing battalion were demon generals and cavalry dressed in black armor, ready to move in a pincer maneuver. They glared like ravenous tigers, like freshly sharpened blades, the edges bright and gleaming. Shen QingQiu retracted his gaze. Lo Binghe, you said you came to Sangjiang Mountain Sect in order to capture me. Correct. said Lo Binghe. You've captured me. And since he'd achieved his goal, it should be time to withdraw. Lo Binghe stared at him. You won't run anymore? Shen QingQiu was silent, and then he slowly nodded. I won't run anymore. The corners of Lo Binghe's lips twitched and then pulled into a helpless smile. It held none of the mocking sarcasm that had been plastered on his face until this moment. I've believed Shizun so many times already, he said lightly. Shen QingQiu, what is the meaning of this? Liu Qingge asked suddenly. He stared at Shen QingQiu as if he'd suffered some enormous disgrace. The Bison Peak Lord is here, and yet you throw yourself at another's feet before him? Shidi, I understand the Bison Peak Lord. You feel like your dignity has been violated, but please use a different phrase. Like hell, I'm throwing myself at anyone. Use a different phrase, please. Thank you. You fear becoming a burden to Sangzhong Mountain, said Liu Qingge. But Sangzhong Mountain's fears are not your burden. Liu Binghe sneered. How many unbroken bones do you still have? Yu Qingyang's hand grasped Zhan Su's hilt. He'd barely done so when next to him, Mu Qingfang anxiously said, Zhang Minxiang, you were in secluded cultivation and forcefully interrupted your training, then face these strong foes. It was already terribly hard on you by pushing yourself to draw your sword. Now I'm afraid your body will really... A burst of black chi rose from Yu Qingyang's face, but he forced it back down. Even if I can't, I must, he said in a strained voice. Shidi had already died once, and at that moment I was unable to protect him. How can I watch him go to his death a second time? At those words, turmoil surged within Shen QingQiu's chest. When it came to the people whom Shen QingQiu most admired and revered in this world, the one who placed first was none other than Yu Qingyang. It wasn't so much because of his sincere desire to shield Shen QingQiu, but because of how he always put his entire heart and soul on the line for the sect. Shen QingQiu was too ashamed to let Sangzhong Mountain and its sect leader continue to wipe his ass and pay the bill. He was the one who had dug his own grave, and so he was also the one who should suffer the consequences. This is the disciple I taught, so it's only right for me alone to take the responsibility. Zhang Minxiang is the head of this sect. On your shoulders rests the safety of every disciple on the 12 peaks. I trust you know what to choose. The hall was dead silent. Yu Qingyang's face froze, and the knuckles of his hand gripping the sword went stark white. Shen QingQiu was reminding him, when in an unfavorable situation, the choice he should make as the head of the sect went without saying. The various peak lords had the exact same thought. So instead, it was Ning Yingying who ran out. She grabbed Shen QingQiu's arm and yelled, I disagree! Mingfan, take care of your shime, said Shen QingQiu. I am no longer a child, said Ning Yingying. I don't need to be taken care of. It's always Shizun taking on everything himself, whether it was that time with the demon woman or against Huanhua Palace at Jinlan City. So this time, why must it be you again? Why is it always Shizun who needs to suffer each and every time? Because this was the grave he'd dug. However, it seemed like he'd managed to raise a normal and filial girl after all. A portion of his remaining worries found release. Weeping at your age, he chided. What sort of image are you projecting? This master won't die. Within his heart, he added, probably. The next moment, Mingfan spoke, his face full of sorrow and rage. Well, isn't Shizun prostrating and submitting himself to the demons for Sangzhong Mountain's sake, a fate worse than death? The sayings only speak of throwing away all one has to give to accompany righteous men, never about doing it to appease demons. What are you saying, Mingfan, you little hellion? How about you speak human words? The situation had dragged on for so long that Lo Binghe had lost his patience. He grabbed Shen QingQiu with one hand and then put the other on Jinmo's hilt. I'll take Shizun's immortal body as well. You're going too far, another peak lord said angrily. The person isn't enough for you. You also want the corpse, and for what? Lo Binghe didn't answer and only waved at Mo Beijun, issuing the order. Just when things had calmed down after such difficulty, another wrong word would reignite the conflict. Wanting to cut that off at the pass, Shen QingQiu was about to tug on Lo Binghe's arm, but thought this was too unsightly and switched to yanking on his sleeve. Only after mulling it over briefly did he steel himself to say, I've already submitted to you. Why go so far? Upon saying these words, Shen QingQiu felt deep shame. He was a man, yet he had been forced to meekly tell another man that he would submit to him in front of so many people. And above all, the other man was his former disciple, who made it even more frustrating and shameful. Nonetheless, Displays of submissiveness had guaranteed effect on any man. Lo Binghei's expression noticeably cleared up quite a bit, and not only did his grip loosen somewhat, his tone even softened. Despite this, his words remained as forceful as before. It's Shizun's original body, after all, so it's inextricably involved. And in the case Shizun tries to pull off another grand escape, this disciple would really be at a loss. As soon as he turned his face away, his voice cooled. Take it away. Mobe Jun had yet to move when Liu Mingyan suddenly appeared in the hall to whisper in Chi-Chi's ear. The latter tilted her head to listen, and shock bloomed on her face before it transformed into calm. There's no need to fight anymore, she called out. Lo Binghei, there's no need for anyone to fight, she continued to say loudly. Even if we agreed to let you take the body away, your wish would not come true. Shen QingQiu was well aware of Chi-Chi's intense personality, and he figured that she was liable to do something extreme to enrage Lo Binghei. But just as he was thinking that this didn't look good, she surprised him by gesturing for Liu Mingyan to step forward. Mingyan, tell them. Shen Shibo's immortal body has disappeared, said Liu Mingyan. After speaking, she stepped aside and several disciples were brought in from the back of the hall. These were the disciples in charge of guarding the funerary platform, who watched over where the bodies lay, and at this moment they were all unconscious. From their faces to their fingertips, their skin was an eerie, bruised color. The hall burst into an uproar. Yu Qingyang's expression immediately changed, and Lo Binghei also raised an eyebrow. Well, there's no need to look at me, Lo Binghei, Qingqi said, unperturbed. I indeed wanted to hide the body away, but by the time I sent Mingyan to the back to move it, the platform was already empty. It's as if the corpse we'd carefully preserved managed to fly off without wings. Her mood and words were both overjoyed. It turned out she'd rather the corpse fly off than let Lo Binghei take it away. Mu Qingfang was next to the disciples, examining him. They're fully unconscious, but their lives are in no danger. They were poisoned. What poison? Yu Qingyang asked. At this point, I cannot come to a conclusion. They were also uninjured. Wait for me to draw some blood for tests. If it's a poison from the human realm, Mu Shidi would be able to identify it at a glance, said Chi-Chiu. Since she can't, I have to ask, was it you? I dislike using poison, Lo Binghei said mildly. This was the truth. Lo Binghei rarely killed with poison. On top of that, in a situation like this where he held the complete upper hand, Lo Binghei had no need to lie. Oh my god, did Zhushi get to it? This was to say, some unknown party had taken advantage of the conflict between the two sides to slip into the mountain entirely unnoticed. And this person had stole away Shen QingQiu's corpse from right under the noses of both the demon race and the cultivation world, while only a handful of walls away. How could anyone not be shocked? Shen QingQiu was puzzled. Why would someone steal his corpse? How come no one wanted him while he was alive, and now that he was dead, he became Helen of Troy? Lo Binghei discerned that continuing to talk here would be pointless and frowned. Fine, no matter who took it, I'll find it. Shin Mo left its sheath, and black chi streamed forth from it. An arsing crack split open where the blade sliced through the air. Drop the siege, Shen QingQiu said to remind him. Lo Binghei gave him a look and then said brusquely, as Shizun wishes. Cheng Lan's sword pointed to the ground. Following upward, Liu Qinggei's hand was tightly clenched beneath his sleeve. Blood poured from a gaping open wound and trickled down the length of the blade and dripped to the floor. After a long second, he finally spat out, "Wait!" This word was akin to an icicle launching forth, yet within it burned deep-seated flames of rage and a fighting spirit that could swallow the heavens. Shinmo was sheathed, but Lo Binghei sneered, "Just try and stop me." Oh! Well! Okay. You know that song by Billy Squier that's called Everybody Wants You? That's Shen QingQiu right now. Oh my god! So that's it! Oh! Oh! Tale as old as time. Yeah! You want a water prison part 2? That seems to be what's going to happen in volume 3. So this, oh my gosh. So each chapter set of this novel, things get crazier and crazier. And there are new questions that have arose from this chapter set that we're going to write on Whiteboard Coon. Unfortunately, goal 1, Shen QingQiu has realized that Lo Binghe is gay. Has he realized that the story can change? Well, yeah, kind of, but I'm not quite sure I'm ready to like say that that one's ready to be like off the table, because I think Shen QingQiu needs to actively push for the story to change. I think that right now he's doing damage control and he's not really had a lot of time to think about it, so we're gonna need to go back to that. And then, you know, realizing he needs to save Lo Binghe and like him and all that, that's gonna come later. But we've at least crossed the first threshold, right? Anyway, I'm gonna look up real quick and see on my phone here what the chapter titles for the last 3 chapters were for this, and let you all know here in a second. I'm very curious because I'm very, very, very curious to see what they are actually. So yeah, let's get in on this. Where are my pins? I want to see the pins for this one. Okay, so regarding the chapter titles, let me go to this one to jump to that. Chapter 52 is called The Eternal Regret of the Chunshan. Oh my god, the ballad. The ballad of Lo Binghe and Shen QingQiu. We're going to talk about that in a hot second. That was chapter 52. Chapter 53 is Master and Disciple Meet Again. Damn, I'm glad I'm not reading these chapter titles or I would have been spoiled for sure. And then chapter 54 is Unhappy Reunion. Oh my god. So yeah. Oh my gosh. This is just insanity. Insanity. So let's talk about this, shall we? Let's talk about this chapter set. We got 2 pictures out of it, which I was really happy with. 2 pictures that are really, really good. One is of ZHUZHI and ZHUZHI and Shen QingQiu inside the brothel with the wine. That whole chapter, we're going to talk about it. I really like it, but probably aside from the picture of the kiss and maybe the one of Lo Binghe where he's got the sword in him and he gets the sword wound and he's sad at the abyss. Other than those 2 pictures, I think this might be my favorite picture in the entire book. And it is of Shen QingQiu when his bamboo hat gets sliced by Lo Binghe and he gets between him and Liu Qingge. That image there, and he grabs Liu Qingge's sword with one hand, with his 2 fingers, mind you, and he keeps Jin Mo from being drawn. That is probably my favorite picture out of the book. I think so. I think that's my favorite shot. I really, really, really like that illustration. Because Shen QingQiu, and just jumping in the fray, he can't help but jump in the way and get in between things, can he? No, he cannot. I'm like, oh my god. So let's talk about this chapter set. I have lots of thoughts, but I want to get through this. First of all, so let's do that, shall we? Okay, so in the dream, at that moment, the moment that Lo Binghe is smiling, he has figured out that Shen QingQiu is alive, and he's figured out that he's there. So he knows that it's Shen QingQiu. So we should put Lo Binghe up here and put on here that he realized in the dream that it was Shen QingQiu for real and not just an illusion. Then one can assume that he went and got Mobe Jun, who is also with Shang Qinghua. I have a theory that Shang Qinghua is going to end up with Mobe Jun, but part of me imagines that, I don't think this is the case at the moment. I think that Mobe Jun is literally just like he picks Shang Qinghua up like a chihuahua, or like the scruff of his neck like he's a kitten, and just drags him everywhere he goes. But I predict by the end of this story, if we can fix the storyline and reveal all the gay characters, that I just imagine Shang Qinghua just getting railed by Mobe Jun by the end of this. Don't ask me why. I feel like that's gonna be Shang Qinghua's fate, and we'll see where that goes. I don't know. We'll see. But he's just basically being dragged along. And after Mobe Jun came with Shang Qinghua, he gave the explanation of the sun, moon, dew mushroom. and how it all worked, being like, well, how could this have been? You were with him. What's going on? And so Shen QingQiu, who is not easy to coerce information out of, apparently, told him everything he needed to know. And then he figured it out, what was going on. So then he was like, oh, well, I'll just go and arrange for this big battle at Sangjiang Mountain. And then he decided to go and try to lure Shen QingQiu out because he knew he would come back to the Sangjiang Mountain. He knew that was going to happen. And then he would capture him and the corpse. The sad thing about this is, because at first I was like, why does he want the corpse back? Like, he has Shen QingQiu and he knows that Shen QingQiu, why doesn't he just take him and leave the corpse? It doesn't matter. The sad thing about it is that Lo Binghe thinks, well, if Shen QingQiu dies again, or if he runs off again, at least I have his corpse to keep me warm at night. And I'm like, what the fudge? Holy shit. At least that's what it comes off as. It may be something different. I'm like, here's the thing about the corpse that we need to, like, questions to ask about all this. Is Lo Binghe still going to try and get Shen QingQiu revived? And what I mean by that is he going to eventually try to put Shen QingQiu back in his original body because that's what he wants? And Shen QingQiu's like, no, that's not me. I wonder if that is going to be the case. And you would think to yourself, oh, well, Romania, that seems like a crazy thing to do. Well, Lo Binghe is crazy. Just a wee bit. He's a wee bit crazy. Just a bit. So I'm like, would he try to do that? I don't put it past him because it's not his Shazoon. But then I wonder if part of the story is going to be Shen QingQiu being like, look, here's the thing. That wasn't me. I inhabited somebody else's body. I don't know how to explain it. It's hard to explain, but this is me. I'm not him. So accept me and just leave the old Shen QingQiu alone. I don't know. To do with this corpse, I also wonder if it has been has it been taken? Has it been taken by ZHUZHI? By ZHUZHI-LANG? Possibly. I wonder, and is it going to be used as a vessel for Lo Binghe's dad? Possibly. I don't know. They brought up the idea of bringing Lo Binghe's father back and trying to, like, use somebody as a vessel to bring him back. That sounds like a problem. That sounds like he could be, like, the actual boss of the story if he's brought back to life. Giving Lo Binghe daddy issues along with other daddy issues, why would we not suspect that MXTX would do something like that? But here's the thing. I did not see it coming from a mile away that ZHUZHI would be, that he would be Lo Binghe's cousin, that he'd be his father's cousin, which is Lo Binghe's second cousin. I did not see that coming at all. So there's so much that MXTX could do in the next 2 volumes that we'd have no clue about. Like, there are plot lines that could be dropped, could be resolved, could be shortened, could be condensed, could be elaborated on. We don't know. We don't know. At this point, there's not a lot to put down from new to old because we're pretty much almost to the point of abandoning the old plot and getting into the new plot. Like, it's very, very close. So the only things I have to note as far as the old versus new, which we'll put up here, is in the old version, Lo Binghe's dad, which we'll get his name in a hot second, is imprisoned in a mountain. He's stuck in that mountain. He is not going anywhere. In the new version, it's possible that ZHUZHI-LANG is working to bring him back. We're going to talk about ZHUZHI. I really like ZHUZHI's character. He terrifies me, but I really like him. So he's working to bring him back, right? And so there's a possibility of that. The only other thing really that's established is that in the original, we know that Lo Binghe goes and kills or destroys each sect and gains wives and power. And that's how the original novel goes. And we could theorize as an audience that part of the reason for that is because Lo Binghe was never fully satisfied, even after having all the wives, and he kept looking for something that he couldn't get, and in the end got Shizun, but it wasn't a relationship that was romantic, and Lo Binghe didn't realize he was gay, and so it was just a big, utter tragedy for our male stallion lead. But in this version, it seems like the new version is that Lo Binghe may destroy the other sex to get and stay with Shen QingQiu, which is quite a turn of events, but it's still like Shen QingQiu is realizing the similarities of the plot, but also the differences within them as well. So it's like, what do you do, sir, with this? So, I really liked the opening of, we finished out this dream sequence. The one thing about these chapters is that these chapters starting and ending in the middle of scenes, I feel like I'm watching The Untamed, because it's like you start this chapter and that chapter just ends, but then a new one starts and you're still in the same scene. I'm like, we're watching this week to week, MXTX. You can't be doing this. But probably the best part about this is that at this point, Shen QingQiu knows. He knows about Lo Binghe and his desires, and he knows that he realizes in this dream that he never properly took the time to view Lo Binghe as anybody other than a character of a story. And now he's like, shit, because I did that, I didn't take into account all the ways he would have emotionally been affected by my actions. And I love that line. It wasn't that he didn't realize it, but he never thought to understand. He knew it was going on, but he didn't stop to try to understand the situation. And now he is, and he's facing the repercussions of it. And it's like, And Shen QingQiu is the type of person that has a good heart, so he wants to do the right thing, and he wants to try to fix the scenario. And something that stands out about him in this chapter set is that no matter what ends up happening, it's one of those scenarios where he will go above and beyond to protect the people around him, even if it's at the cost of himself. So that's kind of his sort of self-harm, is that he's willing to put himself into jeopardy if it's to save everybody else. And Lo Binghe's self-harm is that he's self-loathing and he'd rather hurt himself than anybody else. And it's like, you two are made for each other, you just don't realize it yet, right? So that smile, I was wondering what that smile meant at the end of part 11, but it was basically that Lo Binghe's realized that it's him, that he's back. So ZHUZHI, oh my God. So I really, really love the concept of the character ZHUZHI. I love it. I love the idea that because Shang Qinghua hadn't fully fleshed out this character, I love the idea that if a character's not fully fleshed out and not fully realized, they're kind of like this glitchy, unfinished version. It was reminding me of Wreck-It Ralph, the Pixar movie from Wreck-It Ralph, where it's like the different players start to glitch and their features all like mess up. That's what it reminded me of. I was instantly thinking of Wreck-It Ralph and like the glitchy one character that's in the game that shouldn't be. That's what it reminded me of. But now the Sun Moon Dew Mushroom theoretically could allow ZHUZHI to have gained a new body. Now here's the question. We don't know if he used the mushroom. We don't know. And because the young man, he looks young, he says, humans have a saying, a drop of kindness should be repaid by a flood. And kindness from the immortal Master Shen far exceeded a drop. And then Shen's like, shit, he knows it's me, and he's the Snake Man from Bailu Forest. So at first when he questions whether the Snake Man is Lo Binghe's dad, I was like, oh my God, if it's his dad and we're about to have like daddy issues and daddy liking the same guy that Lo Binghe likes, I'm like, MXTX, this might be too much. This might be too much. But it can still happen, right? So I'm like, oh! But no, it's his cousin. They're relatives. They're related, but he's also his dad's right-hand man. So I'm like, okay. So he works with him. And the thing that kills me is that the mountain that they were under, where all this was Bailu Mountain. And Shen QingQiu's like, well, it would have been nice if the guy I was traveling with that wrote this effing story would have figured that out. But he didn't. The fact that Shang Qinghua is blissfully unaware of whatever he's wrote is insane to me. And it reminds me of Death of the Author. And I know I've talked about this a little bit in this novel, but also my channel. But the concept of death of the author is essentially that once an author writes something and puts it out there in the public for it to be read, and the author reads it, the author kind of gains, in a sense, control of that work, and they can kind of expand upon it in their mind. It's where fan fiction is born, essentially. The birth of fan fiction is the death of the author, because it's where the public reading takes power from that story and extends it in their own way, making it their own. Even it takes that power from the author and extends it to the reader, and literally makes the reader in control of what happens to that character. That's through fan fiction. So to me, it almost feels like this is an extension of that, where Shen QingQiu, who was a reader, is now in the story interacting, but is kind of becoming like they have the power of airplanes shooting towards the sky themselves, because they're making decisions that are changing the story. So they're kind of taking the story into their own hands, which is really interesting. And the fact that ZHUZHI-LANG goes from being this character that's glitchy and unrecognizable to having distinct features and to being back to their former self is really significant, right? And so he's like, oh, well, what's your name? And he's like, oh, I'm Tianlong Jun's subordinate, ZHUZHI-LANG. And then the system is like, well, you've increased the degree of storyline completion. So it was important that he met ZHUZHI-LANG, and you filled in the hidden character list. So B points and activate a plot hole filling event. So we basically are tying together ZHUZHI-LANG into the story, and that's going to fill in some holes in the plot, right? So ZHUZHI-LANG is going to fill plot holes and adding to plot completion. Now, leading an increased degree of storyline completion means that that's why I think that ZHUZHI-LANG took the body, because that's going to be part of it. Whatever this story has entailed for us next, ZHUZHI-LANG taking the corpse is going to be part of the situation. So that's why I think it's happening, right? So, and I like that Shen QingQiu is really excited by this. He's like, yes. He's like, I was all about the plot holes being an issue, and I wanted to help solve the story, and this is great. This is wonderful. Also, he describes himself as beating his chest and stomping his feet and gnashing his teeth at the end of the novel. So I think it's important to note how Shen QingQiu has had the same reaction with his unsatisfaction at the story as Lo Binghe has had with the situation as well. I think that's important to note. Now, Lo Binghe is a little bit more extreme than Shen QingQiu. We'll talk about that when we get to it. But yeah, I feel like of the two of them are very similar in that regards to that situation. But anyway, he's like, well, I saved you once and then you saved me and we're even. And so ZHUZHI-LANG is like, well, there's more to it than that. If not for you, I'm afraid that even after many years, I wouldn't have been able to approach the sun, moon, dew, mushroom. How can you say we're already even? So to ZHUZHI-LANG, like the fact of Shen QingQiu keeping Gong Yizhao from killing him, he got even through that by saving him back then with the demon blood thing, canceling each other out. So they're good now. But he still thinks that he owes Shen for getting him the mushroom, because he doesn't think he could have gotten the mushroom. And he's like, it's this one's first time using demon blood, so I don't know how to dispel it. I just helped you disperse and dissolve the thing, so we're good. So basically, he just canceled it out. So the good news is that the blood drinking has been canceled out. Now, of course, Shen QingQiu just went along with Lo Binghe back to wherever they're going to, so chances are he'll probably have to ingest blood again. I hope not. I hope not. But for all we know, the blood has been evened out. Now, if Lo Binghe finds out that he drank the blood of his second cousin, I don't know what's going to happen there, but probably nothing good, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Maybe it won't have to come up. Maybe it won't get mentioned. Maybe it'll be fine. But what does he say there? He says, after we go to the demon realm, the tracking function will fail and he can't torment you any longer. Now, that line there is interesting, because what is this begs the question, right, of what is ZHUZHI's Long's goal? What is his goal exactly? That is a very, very distinct question. What is the point? Because if we're thinking about this, like, what is his goal in all of this? So it seems like he does not think that Shen QingQiu likes women, because he's very disturbed and unsure of why he wanted to go to the brothel. He's like, this doesn't seem like you. So he seems to know that. He wants to help Shen QingQiu shake off Lo Binghe. So he doesn't want him near Lo Binghe, which is interesting. But he still thinks that he's not straight, which is a thing. And he wants to take him to the demon realm, which is interesting. So we don't know if he used the sun, moon, dew mushroom or not. We don't know. It could be that he just healed himself, right? Or not. We don't know. He's like, why? He's like, well, wait, when did I say I wanted to go to the demon realm? And when ZHUZHI-LANG was like, we're going very soon, and Shen QingQiu's like, that didn't answer my question, so what are we doing? And he's like, why go to the demon realm? He's like, it doesn't have what we're looking for. I don't belong there. And he's like, this is not good. He's like, Liu Qingge's ran off my original body. Why are we waiting? What are we doing? He's like, I need to get there and stop Lo Binghe from hurting anybody. And that's when the snakes show up. I love the idea that ZHUZHI-LANG is like half snake. He's just half snake. But then again, Shen QingQiu is fine with this because he's into monster fucking, and he probably read a bunch of Naga AO3 tags on AO3.org, so he's probably fine with it. He's probably like, oh, who knew? Also, now that I think about it, all those moments with like the snakes and the Donghua have made me wonder if those were Easter eggs and if those were all related to ZHUZHI or not. I don't know. We'll see. I love the idea that ZHUZHI can turn into a snake. It's really cool. I like that a lot. So anyway, he figures out that ZHUZHI, his mother was the sister of Tailan Jun, and his dad was a snake. So you make that what you will. But it can apparently happen in this story. Nobody's judging. No one's judging. Although I love that Shen QingQiu says it's just way too fucking hardcore, is how he describes it. And he's like, could you tell these guys not to slither into clothes, please? I wouldn't be surprised if all of these heavenly demon, like, blood relations, whether it's Lo Binghe, his cousin, or his dad, if they all have an interest in Shen QingQiu, would not surprise me at all if it was genetically related. But he's like, well, it seems awfully fond of immortal Master Shen, so there's nothing this one can do. I'm like, all these snakes are into him. Like, all of these, it would not surprise me if Lo Binghe's father is into Shen QingQiu as well. It would not surprise me one bit that this family is all genetically predispositioned to liking Shen QingQiu. Would not surprise me. And so he's like, why are you at Huanhua Palace? And he's like, well, I came there to take care of original business, but I didn't think I'd find you there. So yeah, what was the original business? So what original business? Was it to get the corpse? Was that it? That's what makes me think too that he wanted to get the corpse back, because was that the business to begin with? Did he go there to get the corpse and Liu Qingge just happened to beat him to it? I like that Shen QingQiu is like, is this gonna be like a telenovela, like soap opera, where the families get together and there's all this drama? But ZHUZHI won't answer. And he's like, I was just obeying my lord's orders. And he's like, was this body of yours sculpted by the sun, moon, dew mushroom? And he's like, if it was, then that's easy. Then we don't have to worry about it. But if it wasn't, he might be using it to sculpt a body for Tailan Jun. So he's like, that could cause a big problem. And he's like, I like that Shen QingQiu's like, did I cause a bunch of problems by my actions? And I'm like, well, you have caused a lot of butterfly effects, so there's not much we can do about that at the point. It's already too late. I'm like, is he... Another thought I had was, were they trying to get Shen QingQiu's body so that Tian Longjun could like go back into the body and then possibly not only like subdue Lo Binghe that way, but also like take over the entire Peak Lords by posing as Shen QingQiu? I don't know. I don't think so. But that's like an option. Or he was just going to use Shen QingQiu's body, maybe. I don't know. But anytime that Tian Longjun is mentioned, ZHUZHI-LANG won't say anything. He just smiles and says nothing. And it's like, it is infuriating. He won't answer the question. And he's like, well, we'll depart for the borderlands tomorrow. And he's like, I want women. And at that point, what is so great is that Shen QingQiu immediately assesses the situation. And he's like, I can't, he'll do anything I say, but I can't escape. So I'm going to take him to a brothel. And I'm going to use my influence and the money that I've got. And I'm going to get them to like get the rearguard wine boiling in the air to like, because it's the snake. He would know it's the snake's weaknesses because he knows all the snakes and demons in this story. And that's how he's going to plan his escape. I like how quickly he thought of it. And then I like that he's like, I want women. That's like the most, that is the least heterosexual thing. Like, he's just like, yes, I want women. Just, sure you do. Sure you do. And the thing is, they go to the warm red pavilion, and I instantly thought of Modao Zushi. This whole scene with them in there doing all this, it instantly felt Modao Zushi, for sure, of trying to get the ladies. And meanwhile, now that part felt like Modao Zushi, but the ballad felt like Heaven Official's Blessing. Where they're like, what, they're singing about us? Excuse me? It felt like the extra chapters of Heaven Official's Blessing, if you know what I mean. But the regret of Chen Shan, the ballad of Shen QingQiu and Lo Binghe, and Shen QingQiu's like, I've been gone for 5 years and y'all have wrote songs about us already? Like, what? And he's like, what story does this tell? And the way that MXTX writes it, the way that MXTX summarizes the plot, where it was like, what were the phrases that were used? They were knocking on boots, taking trips to Pound Town. The two-person push-ups got me. They need to do some two-person push-ups and settle some misunderstandings. That's for damn sure. I guess that's what Volume 3 is going to be about. And then playing a round of Hide the Sausage. And riding the Bony Express after death, who after resurrection would gleefully smack each other's salmons. MXTX. Like, and the thing about it is, I'm like, Shen QingQiu, you are thinking of doing all these things. You are describing them. You are thinking of them in front of all these numerous women. What are we doing? You gonna figure this out, aren't you? But yeah, I do appreciate that Shen QingQiu is the type of character that he's like, oh my god, this is all just a big porn. I've liked that Shen QingQiu's like, take me out to dinner first. He's like, we need to establish a relationship and work on some things before we can go any further. And I feel like that's what Volume 3 is going to be about. It's going to be about Shen QingQiu acting like Belle in Beauty and the Beast, being like, okay, Lo Binghe, you are a feral little mongrel. We got to do some domesticating. You're gonna have to calm down, and we're gonna need to develop a relationship, or I'm not doing anything with you. We're gonna establish some boundaries. We're gonna talk to each other. We're gonna get to know each other, and we're gonna work this out. But I'm not just going to Pound Town with you because you're hot. And I love that. I hope, I'm terrified for Shen QingQiu, but I hope it works out for him. I feel like when we first went to the water prison, it was under all these crazy circumstances. And Lo Binghe and Shen QingQiu, it's like each time it feels like the story gets rewrote and we restart. Like we had Shen QingQiu and Lo Binghe's original relationship, which was terrible and resulted in the Proud Immortal Demon Way. Then we had Shen QingQiu trying to help Lo Binghe as a kid, but the damn abyss was in the way, so it made us restart all over again. Then we restarted all over again, and it was Shen QingQiu and Lo Binghe not understanding each other. Then the self-detonation happened, and then we started all over again, and now Shen QingQiu and Lo Binghe both know about each other's thoughts and have talked with each other, or at least Shen QingQiu knows about Lo Binghe. Lo Binghe doesn't necessarily know everything about Shen QingQiu, and now we're at that point again. So You can't detonate again this time, so you're just going to have to work with it. But this time, you know Liu Qingge, and then we're going to try to plot a way to get him out of there. We'll talk about Liu Qingge later, but yeah. So, chapter 53, I like that ZHUZHI-LANG is like, oh, are you interested in this ballad that's going on? This over-the-top porn? And Shen QingQiu is just like just looks at him like coldly. And he's like, well, it would be best if I remove myself. He's like, sure, let me get up and go. And then he's like, oh, are you starting to feel unwell? And that's when the real gar wine kicks in, right? The top quality real gar. So interesting. I don't know what ZHUZHI-LANG, I don't know his goal. He's an interesting character. I'm very wary of him. I'm glad that character's coming back into the story. I'm glad when we first saw that Snake Man, I was like, what the fudge are you? I'm glad we're coming back in the story, but I don't know what his purpose is yet. But I'm really excited to get into volume 3 and find out. But yeah. So then I love just the setup of the idea of Shen QingQiu riding this snake out of town to escape with him and all the snakes like drunk and coiled up. It was just a really good visual. Like MXTX just did an amazing visual with it. It looked great. And the idea of him transforming into the snake, that was really cool. And then Shen QingQiu's like, yep, I've got you at the base of the mountain here. I've already got enough on my plate. As interested as I am in filling plot holes, I'm going to have to go. So you can forget about the repayment or whatever. And he's like, ZHUZHI-LANG, bye. And he calls him a jelly brand. So I think that ZHUZHI-LANG went after the corpse and took it. And I think ZHUZHI-LANG has decided, well, I know that Lo Binghe has you, and he wants the corpse, so I'm going to make you both come to me, is what I think is going to happen. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know. ZHUZHI-LANG, his entire agenda is still a mystery to me, but we'll see. We'll see where it goes. Who knows? And then I love the idea that Shen QingQiu, he's thinking about that ballad even as he's going towards the mountain. He's like, stop thinking about it. But so then we have this section called Coercion, and we get into chapter 53 and chapter 54. And so he goes up to the peak, and sure enough, just like in the OG novel, there's this big battle raging, but this time it's not that anyone on the peak is dying, it's just they're getting battered down until he can get that corpse, right? Now, what got me was Yu Qingyan sitting there while Liu Qingge was behind him with the palms pressed and giving him spiritual energy. At first, I was like, did Yu Qingyan get poisoned by armor just like Shen QingQiu had at the beginning? That's what I thought. I was like, oh my god, did he get poisoned? And now Liu Qingge is doing the same thing he did for Shen QingQiu back earlier on in volume 1. But that's not the case. We'll get the doctor to tell us what the case is here in a little bit. But Yu Qingyan makes me a bit nervous because around the time that this chapter was going on, I started to remember that in the original novel, Shen QingQiu kills Yu Qingyan. He kills him, and the original Flavor kills him in the original novel and gets him out of the way. So the fact that Shen QingQiu, there were 2 red flags. One is the fact that he originally dies in the original book, which means he could very much die in this. And what made me think that even more and maybe more nervous was when Shen QingQiu was like, yeah, I like Yu Qingyan out of all of them. And I was like, that is a death flag. That is a red flag. That's not good. That means he could die because he's not consequential to the novel. He's kind of like Liu Qingge. Both Liu Qingge and Yu Qingyan are not supposed to be there. And they are still. So their presence is creating butterfly effects upon butterfly effects already. So it won't surprise me. I don't think Liu Qingge is going to die in this book because I think he's going to be like the foil to Lo Binghe and kind of like he's going to be the Jian Chong from Udazushi in this case. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. But I do think that there is a strong possibility that Yu Qingyan could die. And not necessarily by Lo Binghe's hands, but the fact that he's in a weakened state and he feels pushed to an extreme, I just don't feel safe about his character. Maybe he'll live. Maybe we'll be fine. But I don't know about Dare Officer. I don't know if he's going to make it. I got red death flags in this chapter set that make me a little bit wary. But I think Liu Qingge is going to live because he's going to be the one that's constantly challenging Lo Binghe. He is like the Jian Chong of this story from Udazushi. He is like the function kind of of this story for this is what he feels like to me. So we'll see where that goes. But Shen QingQiu, of course, feels really bad because he's like, I've been in hiding and reincarnating for the last 5 years, and you all think I'm dead, and all this is kind of my fault. And he's like, I need to stop this. So anyway, Lo Binghe basically says, I'm not here to kill any of you. I just want the corpse so I can go. And I like that Qingqi is just like, she's like, what? Why? Why are we doing this? And they just go back and forth and have their spat. And then he talks about taking the nameplate, which that was a big thing in Heaven Official's Blessing, was if you take the nameplate, it's like a big sign of an insult. But in the OG series, we have the nameplate. And in the OG one, it's about ZHUZHI-LANG tries to take it. And here, Lo Binghe is going to try to take it. He's just trying to like whittle them down one by one until he can get to that corpse and then run off, right? And then I like that they all are trying to convince him to leave and threaten to fight him. And Yu Qingyan is like, his bot, like, Shin, where, these names are tongue-tying. So it's like, QingQiu Shidi's immortal body is in the hall. We're fine unless you slaughter the entirety of the mountain. Nobody's going to let you get to this body. And Shen QingQiu's like, this is all so complicated and it's my fault. But he's like, I'll just stall you out until I can get to it. And the thing about it is, Shen QingQiu's like, Lo Binghe is not the type of person to stall. He's not the type of person to wait. He's the type of person that he knows what he wants. He goes in, he gets it, and he leaves. So Shen QingQiu suddenly realizes at that moment, shit, he's just waiting it out until I come back. And he's like, oh, no. And then Mo Beijun's like, I don't want to attack anymore. So he sends out Shang Qinghua. And Shang Qinghua is like, oh, no. He's like the Luigi to... He's the Luigi to Shen QingQiu's Mario, which is hilarious because Be Happy shared a picture a long time ago in the Discord that was like a Barnes & Noble review of the novel. And it was like, this story is basically if a man got reincarnated as Bowser, seduced Mario, and suffered because of it, which is kind of true. But I feel Shang Qinghua is very Luigi coded. But except he's shorter, right? So then Shen QingQiu's like, oh my god, there you are. And he doesn't want Shang Qinghua to die because he's the author of the story. He's like, I might need him to help figure this all out later on, even though he seems quite incompetent, unless he's really not, you know? And so then, of course, everybody's mad because they think Shang Qinghua is a traitor, and Mo Beijun just kicks him back out. And he's like, I was forced against my will. Don't be like this. And so then Qingqi starts to fight him. And I like that Shen QingQiu is in full support of Qingqi just kicking his ass. Just kicking Shang Qinghua's ass. He's like, get him. Go for the crotch. So then Yang Yijun tries to like keep Liu Qingge from fighting Lo Binghe. And he's like, nope, I'm going to do it. And Lo Binghe being like, oh, the loser I defeated, which of course riles Liu Qingge up. And the moment he gets called a mongrel, it's like Lo Binghe, he's like, yep, I'm a mongrel. He's like, I could conquer any of these peaks one by one, and you'd all be slaughtered by a mongrel, powerless to fight back. How about it? And what gets me is that Ning Yingying, who he really had a connection to at the start of the novel, she like speaks up and he doesn't even acknowledge her anymore. He's like, whatever. Like he's beyond her. He doesn't even have a relationship with her anymore. He's just like, psh, whatever. But the moment he said that he could go through each peak one by one and destroy it, I'm like, well, that's just like the OG version, except now he's driven by this heartbreak instead of by this lust of power. It's like, but he's like, yep, I'm not going to, he's like, I wouldn't hurt anybody on Qijing Peak out of respect for Shen QingQiu, but I would conquer all of you if you won't give me what I want. And of course, Liu Qingge calls him out being like, well, that's just hypocritical and stupid. So anyway, it's insane. And during this battle, as all this is going on, Lo Binghe is about to use Jinmo, and Changlan is about to get drawn, and Shen QingQiu is like, this is just about a corpse. Why are we doing this? And he jumps in the middle between them And he's like, caught you, Shizune. And Shen QingQiu's like, he's like, why do I do this to myself? I love that he's thankful that Yang doesn't say his entire ID. He's like, don't say Peerless Cucumber. Please don't do it. I'm not. He's like, I shouldn't have told you these things. And so, again, I've been like, well, we'll just go through most of the story. And how are they all going to figure out that Shen QingQiu is Shen QingQiu? Well, he's just going to get lured out by Lo Binghe and have to tell everybody. MXTX isn't messing around with this story. Girl is like, we've got shit to do. So I am floored by the pacing of these chapters because we've gotten through so much. We've covered so much ground. We still have 2 volumes to go, but we covered a lot in this chapter set. Like, we got not only Zhuxi's reveal, we got more mystery with him, but then we also got Shen QingQiu going back. We've got Lo Binghe kidnapping him again. The corpse has gone missing. Everybody knows that Shen QingQiu's back, and it's been like in the matter of like 2 chapter sets. And I'm like, more than that, really, but it's going by very, very quickly. Spare no expense, right? So then that's when I love Lo Binghe, like, just pressing Shen QingQiu into his embrace. And the crazy thing is, Lo Binghe looks like the kidnapper. He looks like the beast kidnapping Belle. And all the rest of Sanjiang Mountain Sect is like Liu Qingge is like Gaston. And the rest of them are all like the mob of villagers being like, I say we kill the beast. Like, all this. But I like Liu Qingge. I don't think he's like Gaston, but I think he's appalled that Lo Binghe is taking away Shen QingQiu. And a part of me thinks that Liu Qingge likes Shen QingQiu, likes him, and doesn't want to admit it. But then another part of me thinks that they're just friends. And he's just like, you took my bestie, bro. What are you doing? Don't violate my bestie. He doesn't want that. And Shen QingQiu's like, well, do I not want it? Like, it's so interesting. And what I was thinking of the whole time this conversation between Lo Binghe and the rest of Sanjiang Mountain Sect was happening, the one thing I was thinking of is, and these are generalized Heaven Officials Blessing spoilers, right? Generalized Heaven Officials Blessing spoilers. Lo Binghe, to me, reminds me in this moment a lot of Hua Chong. But the thing about it is, in Heaven Officials Blessing, nobody talks back to Hua Chong. Nobody bothers Hua Chong. Nobody, like, remotely challenges him, gets in his way, because they know he'll just mess up their shit. He's like, never mind, we're terrified of you. We're not going to bother you. And Hua Chong is 800 years old and has all this time and experience and the whole deal with the 33 gods to kind of prove what he can do. And so there isn't any need for them to feel like they can challenge him. But here, end of Heaven Officials Blessing spoilers, here, Lo Binghe doesn't have that experience, and they do think they can challenge him, and they are trying to challenge him. And so it's very weird and kind of refreshing to see these other characters actually go up to your protagonist's, like, other half and be like, no, we're going to challenge you, actually. And they actually, like, call him out and stuff. And I'm not used to that in an MXTX story. And I'm like, well, so it's kind of interesting to see that actually play out. And Shen QingQiu's like, I'm the fool in this case because I've ended up in your arms again, unwillingly. And here we are. And so he's like, didn't my sweetness make you oh so happy that why should I have exposed you? I was sweet to you. And Shen QingQiu's like, I think we're on different pages in all of this, which is like, he's like, how could a single blunder on Shen QingQiu's bumbling have turned him into a small, pitiful white lotus again? Lo Binghe is very like touch sensitive. It's like clap on, clap off with his personality. I will be honest, Shen QingQiu to me right now is, I think, of all of the MXTX like main couple characters, my favorite. He is. But the weird thing is, I think Lo Binghe is my least favorite. So it's a weird thing. Of the 6, you have Wei Wuxian, Lan Wangji, Xi Lian, Hua Chong, Lo Binghe, and Shen QingQiu. Now, by the end of the story, I may have changed my tune, so don't quote me on this as my final judgment. We still have 2 volumes to go. But as of right now, at the halfway point, I would say Shen QingQiu is maybe my favorite of the protagonists. I think so. They're the one I connect with the most. I relate to the most. I find them the most funny. I They're not the most extreme in any way, but I like them the most. But Lo Binghe is kind of my least favorite of the 6. So I'm like, what a weird world. And I think it's just because Lo Binghe, we have got to understand his character through the course of this novel. And it is unfair to Lo Binghe. I will say this. It is unfair that he's my least favorite, only because he doesn't know what we know about Shen QingQiu and his thoughts. And that isn't fair to Lo Binghe. So I understand why Lo Binghe, he's coming across very tormented and mad and frustrated and confused. And a lot of that has to do with Shen QingQiu is not saying what he's thinking. And we, the audience, hear what he thinks, and we're like, yeah, oh no, we get that. We're like, Lo Binghe, if only you could hear this, you would probably have a different understanding too. But because Shen QingQiu is not talking, Lo Binghe is not able to understand, and so it makes Lo Binghe kind of come across as a jerk. And that's not Lo Binghe's fault necessarily, but until he figures it out, and until he knows what we know about Shen QingQiu, he's going to keep making these same mistakes and assuming these things that aren't necessarily true, and it just doesn't help me like his character more. But I think that it will get there. It's just a matter of time. So if you're a Lo Binghe fan, don't worry. We got 2 more volumes to go. I'm sure I'll probably change my tune, maybe. But he really needs to know what's going on. So, and then Shen QingQiu comes out and explains everything. And Shen QingQiu's like, God, of course he did. He's like, of course he explained everything. Why should we think otherwise, right? Why would we expect anything less? It's like, oh my God. And what I am glad that happens in here is that at first, Qingqi like goes on this tangent, and she's like, this place was a funeral for a year, and we were all so sad that you were gone, and you were off doing who knows what, and blah, blah, blah. And at first I was like, oh no, everybody's gonna hate Shen QingQiu all over again, and then it's gonna be Lo Binghe and Shen QingQiu versus the world. And I thought we just got rid of that. We just got done with that. Why are we starting it again? And then thankfully, Shen QingQiu was able to speak up and was like, I was buried for 5 years. I woke up a few days ago. It's all his fault. And Shen QingQiu was like, why are you blaming me? And so Liu Qingge at least has heard all of this. So maybe him and Yu Qingyan will process it and realize it's not Shen QingQiu's fault that all this is going down. But he's like, fine, you captured me, Lo Binghe. And then Shen QingQiu's like, if I keep trying to talk my way out of this, it's not going to work. And it's just going to make everything go back to the badness it was before. So we're just going to nip this in the bud. He's like, I didn't come with Lo Binghe last time because I didn't understand that he liked me. He's like, but you know what? I've been wanting to be a thigh-hugging guy from volume 1. Now's my chance to actually do it, I guess. So I feel like Shen QingQiu's like, I'm just going to go with him. If he's like, I know Lo Binghe likes me, so he probably won't kill me. He probably is just going to try to do some things to my body I'm not going to be satisfied with. But if it helps everybody else, I guess I'll sacrifice myself. So that could lead to a whole host of things. Like if they get back to Huanhua Palace and Lo Binghe tries to like do something with Shen QingQiu, and Shen QingQiu kind of like has a reaction, and he's like, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't understand this. Then that could open up an opportunity, if Lo Binghe doesn't completely take it the wrong way, for them to have a conversation and talk about it. So fingers crossed that we get some stuff accomplished. But of course, Shen QingQiu is like, look, this is not the time to fight. Just let me go with Lo Binghe and we'll just solve this and you guys won't have to suffer anymore. And I like that Yu Qingyan is like about to, like, he's about to throw down. He's like, he was about ready to go to battle with him, and I really appreciate his character for it. But then Mu Qingfang, who's the doctor, he's like, okay, you were in secluded cultivation and forcefully interrupted your training to face these opponents. So that was hard on you. If you push yourself to draw your sword, then you might die. And he's like, but Shen QingQiu's already died once. He can't die a second time. And Shen QingQiu's like, I probably won't die. So that does make me worried for Yu Qingyan. We find out that he was basically training and he interrupted that forcefully, which caused kind of like, I guess it was similar to what was happening with Liu Qingge back in the mountain in the OG version when he actually does die. So it was probably a similar situation to that. And so Shen QingQiu's like, I don't want you all to suffer on my behalf. And then Ning Ying like tries to grab Shen QingQiu's arm and disagree with him. And Shen QingQiu's like, you know, Ming Fan, take care of her. And she's like, I don't need to be taken care of. And he's like, this master's not going to die, probably. I like him just saying that there. And so again, they're all like, why do you have to keep suffering? And Shen QingQiu's like, I ask myself that every day. But anyway, so they're like, why do you need the corpse? And again, I feel like when Lo Binghe says if Shizun tries to pull off another grand escape, this disciple would really be at a loss without it. And it's like, but somebody's taken the corpse, and I think it's ZHUZHI. I think ZHUZHI showed up and took it, and he poisoned. I feel like it's the snake's poison that got the guards while he could take the corpse. I think that's exactly what it was. So yeah. And then I love Shen QingQiu saying, when did I become Helen of Troy? He's like, why am I Helen of Troy? Why am I the one that everyone wants? He's like, what is this? What is this disciple? What is this master to do with my poor disciple? He's like, what are we to do? Oh. So yeah. And then I love that Shen QingQiu is like, okay, you said you'd stop the fighting as long as you had me. And Lo Binghe is like, as Shizun wishes. I'm like, oh my god. So here's the thing. If Lo Binghe will do anything as long as Shen QingQiu stays with him, Shen QingQiu, because Shen QingQiu had this moment about being embarrassed that he said he would submit to Lo Binghe, which again, it's like MXTX is playing with the gender role stereotypes of sexual positions, I feel, because on the one hand, you have Shen QingQiu, who at the start of said story seemed like, to me, he would be like a top. And then it was like, no, he'd probably be a bottom, like when Lo Binghe was all aggressive and everything. But then in this chapter set, you had Shen QingQiu being kind of like embarrassed that he was being considered anything but a top, and he was like, well, but I'm not a bottom. And then you had Lo Binghe described as being like with a delicate heart like a maiden's, which would be like, okay, well, maybe he's a bottom, and maybe they're verse, maybe they can do both, maybe they're sides, we don't know. But I just love the idea that MXTX is playing with, you can't quite assume the roles that each person will take just based on archetypes and stereotypes, because the story is all about subverting those stereotypes and proving you wrong, right? So I like that, and I like that if Shen QingQiu is playing his cards right, he should open up, but also find a way to try to, like, I'm not saying manipulate Lo Binghe, but get him to like calm the F down, right? But Liu Qingge is gonna go after them, but he's got this gaping wound, and the blood's trickling down the length of his blade onto the floor. And so he finally spats out. Now, look, there was a difference in the translation with this and the end of it. It said, after a long second, he finally spat out, just you wait. Instead of wait, it says, just you wait. And then Lo Binghe says, come and try me. So, yeah, so we're going to have Liu Qingge trying to rescue Shen QingQiu, and Lo Binghe being like, nope, to go on there. So, as far as the character and name guides, I wonder if there's any extra ones in here that we didn't have before. What we got here? Do we have any new ones? Do we get any ones? Mu Qingfang means clear fragrance. A master of the healing arts who feels a sense of responsibility for the well-being of his sect mates. His skills continue to be instrumental in solving medical dilemmas, large and small, even though the most skillful healer has their limits. Then we have Yang Yizhuan, whose name is One Mysterious. The son of a weapon shop owner from the plague-ridden Jinlan city, Yang Yizhuan is an energetic young man who inherited his father's courage. After encountering and being solidly defeated by the Sangjiang Peak Lords on their rescue mission, he manages to convince Liu Qingge to make an exception and take him on as a disciple. So, Liu Qingge, I wanted to read his, where it says, despite being a character who never made an official appearance in Proud Immortal Demon Way, Master Liu had a legion of fanboys for his legendary unparalleled skill in battle. After the transmigrated Shen QingQiu saved him from a lethal chi deviation, his opinion of his distasteful Xizang took a 180, and he will now go into drastic lengths to fight for Xizang's honor. What moving camaraderie between good martial brothers, right? Story, are you trying to suggest that Liu Qingge has a crush on Shen QingQiu? Maybe? We'll see, won't we? We'll see, won't we? Now, with Yu Qingyan, it says, though the transmigrated Shen QingQiu admires Yu more than anyone, he realizes he is no longer the intended recipient of this favor. As Yu Qingyan continues to go to great lengths for someone who's no longer around to appreciate the sentiment, Shen QingQiu must wrestle with his conscience. How long can he keep up this unintentional catfishing scheme? Like, yeah, how long is he gonna, like, keep him from asking a favor? We'll see. So yeah, Lo Binghe. Oh wow, we have more information on them. Interesting. I want to kind of read these now. It says he beat young Lo Binghe for the slightest infraction encouraged in his peers as Shen QingQiu. However, the transmigrated Shen Yan unlocks more and more hidden plot lines and finds that the Scum villain's original awfulness may be rooted in unspoken history, which is the thing with the version of him that we don't know about. So we'll wait on that. Lo Binghe, what do we have with him? When he returns from his cheat-filled level grinding and claws his way out of the abyss 2 years early, he has become dark, mercurial, and thirsty for revenge? Well, that's what Shen QingQiu assumes based on what he knows about Proud Immortal Demon Way. The rift between them worsens with each clash. Lo Binghe's demands for answers go unfulfilled, and Shen QingQiu realizes he no longer understands the person who is neither the protagonist he read about nor the sweet young lamb he shepherded. What does this new Lo Binghe want from his master, and will they be able to resolve their differences before it's too late? Well, next volume is going to give us a lot of things to think about with that, won't we? What we have here with Shen QingQiu. It says with the main, Shen Yan, yeah. The system seems determined to make him retread the Scum villain's most damning crimes, and when the grown-up Lo Binghe comes knocking on his door, Shen QingQiu may have to resort to the nuclear option, which he does. On top of that, more and more often, Shen QingQiu has to contend with the domino effects of his actions as the world around him grows beyond recognition. He's coming to acknowledge that the residents of his new world have gained a life of their own beyond their roles as mere characters in the story. He'll have to hope none of this throws a wrench in his plans before he figures out how he should escape. Well, we've seen how that's come across in this story. So, Ning Ying Ying, she's grown up into a fine young woman who cares deeply for her peak and her Shizun, and is more capable of showing some spine in a crisis. Good for her. Ming Fan helps keep the peak running in wake of Lo Binghe's unfortunate departure, and he does his best to live up to his master's teachings. Liu Qingge, I think, has a crush on Shen QingQiu, but, you know. And then, what else do we have? Qi Qingqi, a woman with a straightforward and fierce temperament, a sect mate that the transmigrated Shen QingQiu gets along well with in this new world. Though she won't hesitate to speak her mind, she cares deeply for her sect. And then Liu Mingyan never loses her courage and poise as she grows into her own, and as an adult, she has begun to go out on her own adventures of all kinds. Then we have Shang Qinghua, overworked and underpaid. The Peak Lord of Anding Peak takes on a thankless job as the sect's housekeeping department. Shen QingQiu's fellow transmigrator may be rather shifty and unreliable, but sometimes a friend from the same hometown is just what he needs. So then we have demons. Tianlong Jun, Lo Binghe's birth father, a heavenly demon. He was sealed beneath the great mountain by righteous sects, but is any cage truly eternal? Bitch, you teasing! You're teasing! Yeah, so here we go. ZHUZHI-LANG, yes. Tianlong Jun's nephew and subordinate. It is his subordinate, yeah, his nephew. Born to heavenly demon and snake demon parents. Sincere and straightforward, he is willing to repay anyone who shows him favor 100 times over, including Shen QingQiu, who spared him when he was still lurking as a snake man in Bailu Forest. However, ZHUZHI-LANG is perhaps not the best at determining what repayment his benefactor would like to receive. So maybe he's more innocent than we seem. Okay, so he is Lo Binghe's cousin, right? Seems legit. Xia Hualing, her current role is as an overworked and underpaid employee, seems something of a downgrade from her original counterpart status as a tyrannical member of Lo Binghe's harem. Then we have Meng Mo, who was not seen this book at all, hardly. He's now Lo Binghei's underappreciated portable grandfather, the things a teacher will suffer to pass on his techniques. We didn't see him at all this volume, hardly. So wherever he is, no. Then we have Mobe June, Lo Binghei's eccentric sidekick, a proud ice demon turned plot device for Lo Binghei's plot-dictated power-up arc, as well as Shen QingQiu's demonic employer. I love that Shen QingQiu has to work under him. It's great. So we have the old palace master, the little palace mistress, Lo Binghei's birth mother, Gongyi Zhao. Let me see here. The former favorite of both the old palace master and his daughter, Gongyi Zhao's star began to fall when the protagonist waltzed onto the scene. He's still an earnest and honorable young man who's willing to disobey orders to do the right thing. I guess he's dead. I'm still floored that Gongyi Zhao just died like that. I'm floored. I'm honestly floored. And I don't know. I guess if he's not dead, then we better find out in the next volume for sure. So, yeah. The other characters, and we have the locations, those are all pretty much straightforward. We had the honorifics and the name guides, which we've done there. And then the glossary, as per usual. There usually are some little illustrations. I want to see if we get any of those. We do! Yay! So, oh, look! Well, there's Lo Binghei and Gongyi Zhao. Lo Binghei with his fluffy hair. I like the way they've drawn him. He looks like he can be menacing, but also innocent at the same time. And then Gongyi Zhao, R.I.P. I guess. Ooh. What else we got? Oh, we got Mobe June. I like his little puffy sleeves that look like they're blue fire. That's really cool. Mobe June's very handsome. And then Shen QingQiu writing the story, writing the sequel to Proud Immortal Demon Way. He looks, I don't know if using the word twink is an appropriate term for him, but if I'm allowed to say that, but I think I'm allowed to say that. And then, oh, good. So we have ZHUZHI-LANG. I love ZHUZHI-LANG's braids. They were in that one image. Like all of the snake braids and the little scales on his face. That's so cute. Yes. Snake man, little snake man. And then Mu Qingfang, he got the biggest glow up. The Donghua did him dirty. The Donghua made him look like a little old man. But here he looks pretty. Long hair makes all these characters look hot instantly. But he looks really good there. I like that. Nice. Any others that we get in this one? Nope. We do have the back cover, though. And there's Mobe June and Gongyi Zhao and Shen QingQiu on the back cover. So this back cover does not give us any informations. The only thing that hasn't changed is Lo Binghei's intense fixation on Shen QingQiu himself, but even this obsession may be more than it seems. Not that Shen QingQiu has time to puzzle through all the inconsistencies. There are various parties at play in the changing plot, and if he doesn't act fast, he may face a fate worse than death. So volume 3, huh? Ah! I'm ready. I'm ready, y'all. Indeed I am. So yes, I'm super excited for volume 3. I've talked for over an hour about these chapters, but these were really good. I'm definitely curious to know your thoughts down below. For sure. I'm so ready. But yeah, I'm super excited. I hope you all are too, but I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll ask Reiki for the chapter breakdowns for volume 3 and get back to you all very soon with some more of Scum Villain's self-saving system. Bye!